Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable. See playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 2301, The Lethal Fire Magma. The four-legged earth ghosts had terribly bitten Cameron. Half of his chest, neck, and arm were all gnawed off. When it all happened, he thought he was doomed. He also thought that Zen had intended to kill him when he saw his palm coming for him. After all, he had been rude to him before. It was beyond his expectations that Zen could shake off the four-legged earth ghosts in just one forceful swing of his hand. Cameron stared at Zen for a while. While Zen was rushing forward, he waved his right hand and threw a light green pill right into Cameron's mouth. As soon as the pill melted in his mouth, the deep wounds on his body healed quickly. His skin and flesh regenerated. He was quite grateful to Zen. He didn't expect that some seemingly wicked stranger would save him from potential death. As he looked at Leland and the other true gods running in front of him, a sense of disgust suddenly emerged in his heart. Upon discovering the abnormal phenomenon in this place, he immediately reported it to Leland. Leland had promised him a reward if he could find something valuable inside the cave. When he was in deep trouble, however, his companions did nothing to save him. Hiss! The four-legged earth ghosts moved at an unusual speed on the cave walls. Even if Zen flew through the cave, he was unable to get rid of them. Look, there are a lot of earth ghosts behind, Cameron told Zen with a terrified face as he heard more hisses from hundreds of black earth ghosts that were pouncing on them from behind. Zen no longer needed to hide himself. He could feel and see around him through his spiritual sense without even looking back. The gods' killing sword array. 4 invisible force fluctuations spread out, which immediately turned into 4 invisible swords that hovered around rapidly. Power shaping. Are you a consummate true god who mainly cultivates the might godly way? Cameron's eyes were wide in shock upon noticing the strong force fluctuations. He had been in the evil ghost region all year round and was well informed, but power shaping was very rare. He had heard of it but had never actually seen it. The earth ghosts that were chasing them were easily swayed away by the swords. Puff, puff, puff. The four-legged earth ghosts boasted infinite power and thick skins, so it was difficult even for consummate true gods to kill them, but not for Zen. With loud shrieks, the four-legged earth ghosts smashed onto the cave walls formed by soft stones. Immediately, the soft stones swallowed their black bodies. One of those creatures' talents was that they could easily walk through the layer of soft stones. In no time, a large group of four-legged earth ghosts appeared right above Zen. Hiss, hiss, hiss. They began to climb on top of each other and formed a huge net using their own bodies. They're going to block our way, Cameron said in horror. These monsters are smart, Zen muttered as his eyes flashed. Thunder materialization. Crack. A pair of huge thunder wings popped out of Zen's back. His speed had swiftly doubled. Cameron felt as if he was flying high above the sky. Before the huge net created by those creatures even closed in on them, Zen had already sped away with him. Is this the consummate level Thurgy of the thunderstorm godly way? Cameron was baffled. He thought to himself, I was wrong. This guy mainly cultivates the thunderstorm godly way, doesn't he? Zen sped up and approached the team ahead. Leland took the lead. As long as the four-legged earth ghost stood in his way, he waved his hands and easily swept the black monsters using 5-colored internal momentum. We can't keep on descending, Jelen, who followed closely behind Leland, said with a worried face. An anxious consummate true god also said, if we stop, they will tear us into pieces. What should we do? No matter how deep this cave is, there will be an end. I'm not going to die here today, Leland stated flatly. Crack. Suddenly, they heard a thunderous explosion behind them. Their spiritual senses charged back and they were all surprised to see the pair of thunder wings that Zen had. That guy actually saved Cameron. Just leave him alone. However, just as Zen had caught up with them, many more four-legged earth ghosts appeared from both sides of the cave. The creatures didn't go after them and just glared at them from a distance with their round eyes. It was a little strange. Leland was slightly fixated at that scene. Then, on the corner of his eyes, he saw holes the size of a fist appear on the wall of the cave. Inside those holes were rays of dark green light being released. He had doubts in his mind, but as he realized what was happening, his expression changed. Everyone, be careful, stay away from those holes. Leland cried out. Swish, swish, swish. As soon as he finished his words, green magma suddenly gushed out from the holes where the four-legged earth ghosts came out of. It's lethal fire magma. Failing to defeat them, the four-legged earth ghosts drilled holes through the layer of soft stones so they could draw out the lethal fire magma. The magma underground was worse than the water in the time sea. They could turn even the holy beings into ashes. How could they get past it? Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 3 top-ranked true gods who were unable to dodge were immediately cut through by a stream of lethal fire magma. The lethal fire magma resembled sharp arrows and left fist-sized holes on their chests. Such injuries were not fatal to the top-ranked true gods. But around the holes on their chests, there was still some lethal fire magma left. They looked at each other with horror in their eyes. Help, help, who can help me? One of the true gods frantically wailed. Pull the lethal fire magma out of your body. Someone shouted. But no one dared to help them. The presence of the lethal fire magma could undoubtedly cause death. Boom! The small bit of lethal fire magma that remained on their bodies instantly ignited, turning into balls of green flames that quickly enveloped the 3 top-ranked true gods. In just a split second, they all vanished. Their bodies, souls and inner worlds had been burnt to nothingness, turning into green streams of lethal fire magma, and flowing into the gaps between the soft stones on the ground. If there was anything in the world that could resist the power of the lethal fire magma, it must be the layer of soft stones. Chapter 2302, A Dangerous Act. Everyone gasped in astonishment upon witnessing the tragic end of the 3 top-ranked true gods in the lethal fire magma. Even Leland looked a bit scared. As a demi-holy being, Leland could protect himself so long as he did not venture into the forbidden areas. Those four-legged earth ghosts were powerful, but they did not really pose any big threat to him. However, the lethal fire magma was different. Any sort of contact with the magma would be enough to burn him to death. Drip, drip, drip. The viscous, molten liquid rushed out of the layer of soft stones and erupted through the cracks on the ground. A scorching aura emanated from the earth. Everyone moved to higher ground and some even chose to float in the air. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. More earth ghosts emerged from the layer of soft stones, creating more holes on the wall. Each hole emitted a faint, green light. This was enough to tell everyone present that another wave of lethal fire magma was soon to erupt into the cave. We're doomed. It's all over. We're doomed. One of the top-ranked true gods despaired. Let's fight them to death. How? Can you resist magma? Everyone was at a loss, even Zen could only look around with a frown. Was this really how all would end? No way. He never expected things to end up like this. Zen's eyes flashed and he stretched out his hand, using it to sweep through the ground. Sizz, sizz. This layer of soft stones was extremely tough. Back then, it took Harold quite a lot of strength to break through it. Thus, Zen saw it fit to go all out. He pulled out a pillar of soft stone which was as high as a person. After that, he stretched out his hand and activated the power shaping. He pointed his finger towards the pillar and cut away on the soft stone. Crack, crack, crack. Zen's finger served as a kind of carving knife that cut through the stone and shaped it like a piece of meat. Everyone's eyes lit up when they saw what Zen was doing. That's right. This layer of soft stones can resist the lethal fire magma. We can use the stone as a shield, Jalen exclaimed with joy. What a powerful strength. And he can even shape things at will. Leland couldn't help but remark in awe. If he went all out, he too could tear the soft stone into pieces, but he couldn't do it with the same finesse that Zen showed just now. With a mere 8 strikes, Zen successfully cut the stone into 9 pieces before patting down the sides. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The hard and strong stone pieces immediately shot towards the crowd. Zen did not care about these other people, but this cave was too unpredictable. It would be impossible for him to simply rely on himself to escape unscathed. Cameron received one of the stone pieces and felt his arms immediately strain from the weight. He never expected it to be so heavy. Just how much strength did Zen exert to cut into this stone? When all stone pieces had been distributed, the densely packed holes began to spurt out streams of lethal fire magma. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. These spurts of molten lava gushed out on all sides. Everyone come together. Each person should block a side. Leland ordered, carrying a stone piece to block his left side. Meanwhile, Jalen rushed towards Leland and blocked his right side with his own stone piece. The others followed suit, pairing up to block the flow of lava from all sides. Sizz, sizz. There was a sick, sizzling sound as lethal fire magma poured out and splashed onto the stone pieces. The top-ranked true gods gripped the stone pieces with their life, their hands even trembling slightly as they waited for the lava flow to subside. Just one touch of this lethal fire magma could kill them. Of course, these true gods would be nervous. Zen lifted his own stone piece and leaned against Cameron. Unlike everyone's rigid faces, Zen looked rather calm. The more dangerous the situation, the more composed one should be. There was a better chance of surviving a crisis if one kept a level head. Everyone, move at a constant speed and pass this place. Zen ordered with a firm but calm voice. He's right, Jalen and I will lead the way, Leland affirmed. Thus, these 9 people advanced as they floated in midair. All the while, lethal fire magma continued to spurt and splash in all directions. They had to be extremely careful or the molten liquid would reach the people behind the stone pieces and burn them instantly. Due to their cautiousness, their speed reverted to that of a snail's. With such a slow and easy target, the 4-legged earth ghosts that crawled on the cave walls couldn't help themselves and flew into a frenzy. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. After the first 4-legged earth ghost took a move, the others followed and pounced on everyone again. Bang! There was a loud noise and a 4-legged earth ghost slammed onto a shield. The top-ranked true god who held the said shield panicked and he dropped the stone piece almost instantly. With the shield gone, the lethal fire magma spurted and splashed toward everyone. Dang it, Zen cursed when he saw what happened. It wasn't just him. Leland, Jalen, and the other true gods felt shocked and extremely frustrated at what happened. It was already extremely hard to advance while lifting the stone pieces, but what were they going to do now that magma showered over them? To panic now would most probably mean death. In a moment of desperation, Zen shouted, "Everyone! Place the stone shields outward and gather in the middle. Don't panic." His words contained strong soul force that struck into everyone's minds. Even Leland felt some kind of pain coming from his soul. However, it was under this pain that everyone forgot their fears and no longer panicked. All of them got in formation and formed a circle. Unfortunately, there were still a few who surrendered to their fears. One consummate true god screamed and threw away the stone piece he had before rushing towards another direction. Zen simply ignored this foolish consummate true god and jumped with the stone piece in his hand. Swish, swish, swish. The stone piece spun in the air and blocked the falling lethal fire magma drops, preventing any from falling onto everyone's heads. As for that one guy who rushed out, his agility couldn't save him and ended up bumping into a few 4-legged earth ghosts. It was then that a stream of lethal fire magma swept through him with a nasty sizzle. Sizzle. They watched as dark green flames immediately engulfed the consummate true god's body. He quickly turned into a puddle of green fluid that dripped onto the ground. Tobias, why did you rush out like that? ... This horrendous sight filled everyone with grief, but it also served as an important lesson for them to keep their heads in this extremely pressured situation. Some others had wanted to rush out and flee from instinct. It was only because of Zen's soul attack that they forgot about this urge and maintained their formation. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The situation had somewhat stabilized, but the 4-legged earth ghosts remained a problem. They continued to clash and smash against the stone pieces everyone held for protection. However, Zen, Leland, and Jalen countered with their own attacks and drove the 4-legged earth ghosts away. These creatures were thick-skinned, but not even them could resist the heat of the lethal fire magma. Some of the 4-legged earth ghosts bounced off the stone pieces and came into contact with magma, turning into puddles of green fluid instantly. Chapter 2303, Stone Mouse. There were only 8 people left. Each of them carried a soft stone piece with great care as they moved forward on the road. The 4-legged earth ghosts lived there all year round, so they were very familiar with the surrounding terrain. But with the joint efforts of Zen, Jalen, and Leland, they never got the chance to approach. Moreover, the earth ghosts were also afraid to die. At that point, streams of lethal fire magma were shooting out everywhere in the cave. If they weren't careful enough, they could be burned to death. Over 100 of them had already been burnt before the attack stopped. They just kept creeping through the layer of soft stones, creating more and more holes to draw out more lethal fire magma. After an hour of moving forward against the magma, the group finally found an open space. "Look, we're safe after we walk past the space ahead," Jalen joyfully said. It was a huge cave ahead. The 4-legged earth ghosts had drilled holes on the wall while relying on the pressure generated by the lethal fire magma. There wasn't enough pressure in the open space, and the lethal fire magma would also no longer be a threat to them. As they approached the open space, the creatures stopped digging holes as expected. They even stopped coming after the group and just hid under the layer of soft stones. Leland then turned to Zen and saluted. "Thank you for saving us. If it weren't for Zen, they all could have died." Even Leland wasn't so sure how he could avoid the lethal fire magma without help. He gave up on the idea of killing Zen. Whether Zen came all by himself or followed them, he did a great job in saving their lives. Zen nodded his head and said, "In situations like that, we need to look out for one another. I took action not just to save you, but myself as well." Leland couldn't help the smile on his face as he nodded. Given his cultivation base, Zen was a man of a broad viewpoint. During countless years of exploration, many people had died of selfishness and distrust. Even if Zen didn't know them at all, he saved them, which was enough to prove his insight and vision. When they went to the open area and looked ahead, they got a little uneasy once again. Plop, plop, plop. Beneath the large cave were many huge, deep pools. Instead of water, there was lethal fire magma inside each pool. The auras released by the pools were blazing, causing people to feel hot on the face. Everyone thought twice if they should move on or not. Without much hesitation, Zen, who was still carrying a soft stone, lightly tapped his toe and flew up. Others followed suit. The soft stone was as tall as a person, and it was not very convenient to fly with it, but no one chose to throw it away. After all, the soft stone could save their lives with its ability to resist the lethal fire magma. Plop, plop, plop. Hot bubbles continuously came out of the pools, as if a giant beast was going to emerge from underneath. Despite knowing that there was no living being in the lethal fire magma, they still couldn't help but be shaken up as each bubble popped out. As he flew, Zen peered through the pools and observed the lethal fire magma silently. Just like its name, the lethal fire magma was a kind of magma that contained deathly flames. In a flash, Zen quietly activated the infinity ruler in his mind. The golden circles in his eyes flickered slightly, but the infinity ruler did not respond at all. There was no trace of internal momentum in the flames, which meant that they were probably not formed by the elementary fire godly way. How strange, Zen thought to himself. His flesh body could resist all kinds of flames except for the lethal fire magma. After they walked about 10 miles in the spacious cave, thunder struck from ahead. Splash! A stream of lethal fire magma suddenly belched from the pools. It washed against the top of the cave and splashed everywhere. Although the layer of soft stones at the top of the cave could resist the lethal fire magma, the latter had scoured out several pits day by day. Witnessing that scene, everyone stopped in their tracks again. Is this a fountain? How can we get past this? They all realized that there was an even more terrifying place in the divine land in addition to the forbidden lands. Splash! The lethal fire magma in the pools kept boiling, spurting out and bumping into each other in the air. After watching it in silence for a while, Zen finally said, "The lethal fire magma erupts intermittently. If we know when exactly to move, it wouldn't be that hard to pass it." Leland nodded in agreement and said, "We need to figure out the right timing." It was easier said than done. One wrong step and they were doomed. They were under a great deal of pressure. Zen slowly spread out his spiritual sense and closed his eyes. There were over 1,000 deep pools before them. Some erupted in unison, while others erupted once after a long while. Zen mentally took note of the rhythm of each eruption. After about an hour, Zen slowly opened his eyes and said, "Let's go together. Trust me." Cameron was the first to follow Zen. At that time, he trusted Zen more than Jalen and Leland. It was Zen, a stranger, who didn't leave him alone at such a crucial time. The others didn't say anything. They just marched forward through gritted teeth. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Zen flew out while everyone else followed closely behind him. After flying for about 1,000 feet, Zen said, "Stop." Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. They all stayed still in the air. Splash. About 7 pools around them erupted in unison, and only the one under their feet remained calm. When the eruption was over, bubbles began to emerge from the deep pool below them. Plop, plop, plop. Zen's eyes flashed as he yelled, "Now!" At that moment, no one questioned Zen as they all flew with him without hesitation. Just as they had glided past it, the pool erupted. They were all in shock, but were also secretly admiring the way Zen had led them to safety with his correct calculations. They kept moving forward while alternately stopping, and they encountered no trouble. About 2 hours later, they all had finally flown past the deep pools. A small black altar appeared on the side of the cave wall not far away. A stone was pristinely placed on the altar. It was a gray mouse that was intricately and beautifully crafted. Zen's heart skipped a few beats as he saw it. He knew very well that the mouse was not carved, but had grown naturally. It was the reincarnation of the stone mouse. Suddenly, Zen started to smell something fishy and sweet once again. Chapter 2304, Burned to Death. Zen drew a breath and felt the smell seem so familiar. Before he entered the cave, he had smelled something strange from the gust of the hot wind. And unexpectedly at this moment, it appeared once again, which made him deeply doubt. Leland on the side had his eyes flash a glimmer of light upon seeing the stone mouse. He had no further knowledge about what it was, but he knew that it was definitely not an ordinary thing. He had taken a great risk to come all the way down here. No matter what, he would definitely take the stone mouse as his own. He looked at the 7 people present around him and contemplated. Among them, Jalen was no match against him. The only person he was wary of was Zen. Although Zen was only a consummate true god, he had a variety of methods. He was definitely not as simple as he looked. Leland had once speculated that Zen likely came from a large clan on the floating island. He was caught in his own thought, not realizing that at this moment, the others were as well concluding their own plans. Especially Jalen. He previously made a scene and clamored to go back, but after catching sight of the stone mouse, he had the same intention just like Leland. His eyes were filled with greed. Seeing that Leland hadn't made a move yet, he narrowed his eyes and decided to move first. Whoosh! It was to no one's expectation to see Jalen suddenly rushing to the stone mouse. He was fast enough, and in no time, he had grabbed it in his hand. Jalen, do you want to die? Leland shouted, being caught off guard by Jalen's action. His face hardened. He had the same thought and wanted to get the stone mouse, but he was still rational. The path for them to go back was already blocked and they couldn't use grand teleportation. So what if he obtained any treasure? The first thing that mattered was that he still couldn't leave. Rushing out to obtain it first wasn't of importance, as he was worrying about such problem in the first place. Ha ha ha, this thing. Jalen just laughed it off. He gripped the stone mouse and grinned, but was frozen in an instant. He lowered his gaze and looked at his hand. It was empty, as there was nothing. He asked in surprise, "What's going on?" Everyone looked over. An incredible scene appeared as if by magic. The stone mouse that should have been in Jalen's hands vanished and once again appeared on the altar. They couldn't believe their eyes. Zen frowned at what happened. He witnessed how the stone mouse quickly vanished from Jalen's hand and returned to the altar. There was even no space fluctuation at all. It was logically impossible. Leland also felt that something was wrong. This thing is weird. As he finished speaking, he strode towards the stone mouse and swung his hand in an action to grab it. He took 2 steps back, but it felt light in his hand. Under the gazes of the crowd, the stone mouse disappeared. No one, even him who just grabbed it, had ever witnessed how the stone mouse suddenly disappeared. After Leland's action, the other top-ranked true gods walked forward and also tried to do the same. After much deliberation, they found out that the stone mouse was unable to leave the altar more than 3 feet. Going further than 3 feet away, it would then automatically return to its original position. They had tried every means, like stuffing it into their space ring, and some had even placed it into their inner world. But in the end, it was still ineffective whatever they did or wherever they tried to hide it. Once it moved over 3 feet, it would still return to the altar. It's so strange. The space law doesn't work here. How did this thing achieve that? This is so strange. Everyone was stumped as nobody knew what to do next. Zen was the only one who didn't take to try to grab it. After a while, he finally asked, "Everyone, don't you feel that the sweet and fishy smell is getting stronger?" At Zen's words, they all sniffed in the air. Yes, what a weird fragrance. I have smelled it when we just entered the cave. Where does the scent come from? It was not until then that everyone turned to focus their attention on the scent. The smell filled their nostrils and was gradually getting stronger. As they were still wondering, Zen felt that his soul was slightly itchy. Cracking sounds were suddenly heard. Zen whipped his head and saw countless snake-shaped cracks spreading rapidly on the cave walls on both sides. Crack, crack, crack. Not only the 2 sides of the cave, but the same sound resounded from under their feet. The cave, made of layers of soft stones, was crumbling. Splash! It wasn't a big deal that the layers of the soft stones cracked, but there were numerous steams of lethal fire magma running out of the cracks. Dang it! Zen's expression changed drastically, and the others were all as pale as paper. They felt grieved that they had previously exhausted themselves in order to survive the dangerous situations. Now that the world around them was collapsing and the lethal fire magma was coming at them like a vast ocean, how could they avoid it? Retreat! Retreat! How? I just became a top-ranked true god. I never thought that I will die today in this strange place. Those top-ranked true gods all wailed miserably. It was only Zen, Leland, and Jalen who kept their calm. They used almost all of their skills, trying to avoid the broken stones and the lethal fire magma that was surging towards them. Dong! Zen floated in the air and lifted the stone piece. He used it to block the lethal fire magma that showered above his head. Turning over his body, he effortlessly kicked away a mountain-sized broken stone. He had already activated his strength to the limit and in turn, his muscles bulged. Growing to the size of the wild god body would be possible if it weren't for the limit of the space. It restricted him from doing so. But even if he tried his best, the scene he saw after kicking the stone away made his heart sink. He was fully concentrated on his own fight that he wasn't aware of what had been happening to his companions. The flows of lethal fire magma formed a torrent and completely drowned everyone, including Leland and Jalen. They weren't even given the time to scream before they were covered by it. A sudden realization came as he was the only one left. Why is this happening, then? The lethal fire magma had almost occupied every corner of the cave, so there was no chance to avoid it. He became alert as it was quickly rushing towards him. He activated a golden pattern on his chest. Promise of absolute beginning. The promise of absolute beginning was the promise made after the divine land was created. He deducted that this promise should be made by Chiyu personally, which was used to block the attacks from any internal momentum in the divine land. The promise of absolute beginning was not invincible even if it was activated. It could not block the soul attacks or power attacks. The lethal fire magma was not produced by internal momentum. He took the chance even though he was not sure whether it would work or not. Buzz! A burst of golden light enveloped his body. Right after, he was completely submerged in the lethal fire magma. It worked. Zen's heart skipped a beat. The golden light that covered him had isolated and prevented the lethal fire magma from making any damage to his body. But there was a time limit on the effect of the promise of absolute beginning. It could only last for 9 seconds after it was activated. Using the protection of the promise of absolute beginning, he exerted himself to swim in the lethal fire magma. He had to escape in a short time as soon as possible. 3 seconds passed, 6 seconds, 9 seconds. The time was already on the limit as the golden light around his body quickly dimmed. He tried squirming away from the lethal fire magma but he felt that it was endless and was unable to break away from it. The last promise of absolute beginning. He cried out as a last resort. He had already activated the promise of absolute beginning once when he faced Edmund. Now he had activated the last one. This time, he had another chance and there were only 9 seconds left for him. Buzz! Zen struggled and continued to swim. The golden light shone brightly for the second time, enveloping his body. However, his attempt was once again futile. It felt as if he was swimming in the deep sea and couldn't move to the surface of the sea at all. The last 9 seconds had already passed, and the golden light on his body finally disappeared. He was entirely enveloped by the lethal fire magma. I won't be lucky this time. A bitter and complex feeling rose in Zen's heart. Sizz, he felt the burning sensation on his skin until he felt it deeper inside his body. He looked at his hands which had been quickly burned to ashes. The lethal fire magma burned him from outside to inside. It burned his skin, flesh, meridians, bones, viscera, and at last the inner world and the soul. Chapter 2305, The Hallucinatory Fragrance. Nobody could escape from the erosion of the lethal fire magma. At the final moment, Zen's mind went totally blank. He was already being pummeled into darkness, even before he could recall the hits and misses of his life. One thing was clear, if his soul diminished, that was the end of his time in the world. There was no returning back. There were many legends revolving around death in the divine land. One such was that if a person died, he or she was destined for hell, namely the Abyss Demon region. It was said that the Abyss Demon region had 18 layers, filled with fiends and monsters. Almost all of the incarnations of fears would automatically reveal themselves in the Abyss Demon region. Harold said that the stone mouse knows the secret of reincarnation, Zen thought. Then, Gregorio, who is supposed to die, is still alive. If that is the case, then the Abyss Demon region may be the place of reincarnation. Then it shouldn't be a coincidence that the body of Stone Mouse showed up on the edge of the Abyss Demon region. Wait, why am I still thinking? Am I not dead? If one's soul was completely destroyed, he or she would lose the ability to think. As soon as this realization dawned on him, a glimmer of hope lit up in his heart. But despite the hope, he could hardly move his limbs, nor speak, see or even smell. Except for the small strand of consciousness, he seemed to sense nothing at all. Suddenly, a thought communicated with him. Zen, are you okay? Is that you, number 9527? Zen was more than happy to communicate with no. 9527. How are you coping? Technically, if Zen's body was eroded, the sclerite on his chest and number 9527 should have been burnt. He didn't expect that number 9527 could even communicate with him so freely. Of course I'm fine, what should I be otherwise? Number 9527 answered in astonishment. Its answer left Zen even more baffled. He said, my body has been burnt to ashes. The sclerite where you are in should have been burnt as well. There was no way Zen could save himself, even if he used 2 promises of absolute beginning. Once he entered that cave, it would be the end. Number 9527 was silent for a while before chuckling. The sclerite is not burnt. What? How? Zen was stunned. Neither the sclerite nor your body has been burnt, number 9527 replied. Zen's mind went blank as he listened to these words. He then asked, then what is wrong with me now? I cannot move or feel. You have been deprived of your senses. Currently, you are lying on the ground, said number 9527. Quote, nothing that number 9527 said made any sense to Zen. He clearly remembered being devoured by the lethal fire magma. Then how could number 9527 say that he was all right? What is going on? Could you explain it? Can you help me? Zen asked. Although number 9527 was an insignificant brain unit, it was still a strand of the chaos ancient god's soul. Therefore, it had a much wider range of knowledge than Zen. I myself am to be blamed for landing in this situation. Even I was deluded by the hallucinatory fragrance at the beginning, number 9527 answered. I could sense something was not right until I smelled it again. By then it was too late. You was already taken to this place. The hallucinatory fragrance. This place. What are you talking about? Zen still looked confused. In reality, nothing exists in this cave. The 4-legged earth ghosts and the lethal fire magma are merely illusions, number 9527 said. You simply have been affected by the hallucinatory fragrance. Zen could vividly remember the scene now. As soon as he stepped into the layer of soft stones, he could smell a sweet and intense fragrance. The first hallucinatory fragrance had thrown everyone into a dangerous situation. And the second one formed a situation of death that they could not escape from. Zen remained silent for a while, and then he asked, do you mean to say that all this is not real? Not really. The stone mouse is true, number 9527 said. If I'm not wrong, it should lead you to the reincarnation land. The reincarnation land? Zen asked curiously. After thinking for a moment, number 9527 said, your inner world is not yet complete and it's completely normal if you don't know much about it. Some people in the source world would create a door for the living beings inside their inner worlds, which is known as the chance of reincarnation. Reincarnation that includes the restoration of memories of the previous life? Zen asked. Yes, number 9527 said after thinking for a moment. I guess that the stone mouse was for the 9 Li race, but after their members were killed in the divine land, it fell into the hands of someone else. Is it Gregorio? Before he had set out, Zen heard about this person from Harold and Joy. He thought for a while and then said, but now the stone mouse has been reincarnated again and Gregorio has nothing to do with it. Then, why did we enter this illusion? I don't know, number 9527 admitted. It was equally puzzled with this fact. It added, it is most likely that this is someone else's doing. Somebody might have got the possession of the stone mouse and clearly did not want anybody else to gain the benefits of reincarnation. But that somebody did not succeed in stopping me. I entered the reincarnation land. Didn't I? Zen asked hopefully. Partly that is true, but you seem to have lost all your senses and are hardly able to move. I am afraid you haven't fully succeeded. I guess you fell into the reincarnation land by some abnormal means, so your 6 senses are suppressed, number 9527 said with a slight smile. Zen thought for a while and felt that number 9527 had a reasonable explanation. He was like a dead man now. What about the others? Zen inquired. They are lying on the ground, just like you, number 9527 said, looking around. Both Leland and Jalen lay on the ground motionless, like corpses. It thought for a while and said, maybe I can pass on my sense of the surroundings to you. Let me try. As soon as it finished speaking, Zen could feel its consciousness. When his soul was connected with No 9527's consciousness, he could clearly see the surrounding environment in his mind. It was a dark world that possessed nothing. But not far away, Zen could see a small altar, on which the statue of the stone mouse was placed. This altar seemed different from the one he had seen before. There were tiny wisps of cyan smoke that slowly floated around it. Zen thought for a while and then asked, "Number 9527, is it possible for you to control my body? I want to have a closer look at the altar." Zen had a strong feeling that the key to the current problem was located on the altar of the stone mouse. But since he was detached from his senses, he couldn't do anything. Number 9527 didn't seem to have any problem in doing so. "Let me try." Without much hesitation, number 9527 poured its own consciousness into Zen's mind. After a while, Zen was able to get up. But he still felt unsteady. As soon as he got himself into upright position, he lost his balance and fell to the ground. "I'm sorry. It's my first time to take control of a human body," number 9527 said apologetically. Again Zen slowly got up and groping in the darkness, he unsteadily walked towards the altar. Chapter 2306, Repeat the Same Fate. Just as Zen stood up and had taken several steps, a huge figure suddenly appeared not far away. The figure was discreetly moving slowly in the darkness, but number 9527 still had sensitively noticed it. It didn't take a while before two small dark green spots emerged from the darkness. It turned out to be a mouse as tall as a man. "What a big mouse!" Zen cried out in surprise looking at the figure that suddenly appeared. As he was currently manipulated by number 9527, he abruptly stopped and stood still. The mouse lightly crawled over, drawing close to a top-rank true god. Once in a close distance, it held him up and dragged him into the darkness. Since all his senses were sealed off, the true god had no idea what was happening with his body. Even if the big mouse chewed him up, he would still not know. What a pity to die like this. Once targeted by the big mouse, Zen would probably suffer the same fate. His corporeal body was still much stronger than the other true gods' bodies. It was even sturdier than Leland's body, that perhaps it would be possible that the big mouse could not chew him, and he might have a chance to survive. However, it was still obviously unrealistic to pin hope on this. "This mouse is not intelligent. It won't eat you for the time being," number 9527 comforted Zen as it sensed the latter's worry. In the meantime, it still continued to control Zen's body with a slow movement. "Do you know where this mouse comes from?" Zen asked curiously. "It must be arranged by the person who has occupied the stone mouse. The hallucinatory fragrance can only make the illusion, and can't kill people. After these persons' six senses are sealed, they can only be eaten by the big mouse," number 9527 continued to guess. "Most likely." No 9527's inference might reasonably explain some of the problems. According to the changes around the place, it was not an easy thing to guess what had actually happened. While moving and taking a few steps, they noticed that in the distance, there were a few dark green lights emitting in the darkness for the second time. "They are coming," number 9527 cried. Zen's body once again stiffened. He had no other choice but to stand still. For now, his location was very close to the altar. From the darkness, another group of 3 big mice slowly emerged. 2 of them did not hesitate to move forward and grab the bodies of 2 top-rank true gods on the ground. The third big mouse had unfortunately walked slowly towards Zen. "This is too bad." A bitter smile appeared on Zen's face as he asked, "Can you run now, number 9527? Even if we try to run away, I'm afraid we can't escape from this big mouse." Number 9527 answered helplessly. It could only barely control Zen's body, far from being as flexible as Zen himself. It might be able to do it only if Zen allowed it to deprive his soul and totally occupy his body. With no other options left, Zen and number 9527 just stared at the big mouse quietly moving on the ground to where they were located. But after walking a distance near his body's location, the big mouse abruptly turned its head and stared at the consummate true god called Jalen. It turned around without warning and walked towards Jalen. Seeing this, Zen and number 9527 heaved a sigh of relief. It was, after all, a creature without intelligence. They silently watched as the big mouse dragged Jalen into the darkness. After making sure that it was safe to move, Zen finally quickened his pace. Not long after, he quickly stepped on the altar. Number 9527 unleashed its spiritual sense and looked around. Except for the smoke, it did not sense anything unusual. "What should we do now?" Zen asked. Take the stone mouse's corpse out, number 9527 replied and instructed. Zen did not have much information, and he could only rely on the mouse's corpse. Every time the stone mouse was reincarnated, people used the dead body of its previous life to find the new one. The dead body should be the main key. They would probably find further information from it. But how can I take it now? Zen felt perplexed and asked. It would not be easy for him to take out the dead mouse from his space ring. There was only Zen's soul mark on his space ring, so number 9527 was not able to take it out. After thinking for a while, number 9527 raised Zen's right hand at his forehead and said, "Release your spiritual sense and open the soul mark on your space ring." Release my spiritual sense. Zen's 6 senses had been sealed off, and now he felt as if he had been locked up in a dark box. Without the help of number 9527, he could not even tell direction. He had no other choice but to give it a try. Zen's soul emitted a burst of golden light. Driven by the enormous soul pressure, his spiritual sense became abnormally powerful. With his actions, he was actually breaking through the layer of restriction. Buzz. His soul constantly trembled as he forced his spiritual sense to rush out of his mind in order to communicate with his space ring. He tried a couple of times, but no matter how hard he tried, the space ring did not move at all. It appeared that the restriction which was set by using the hallucinatory fragrance was exceptionally powerful. The restriction could even work for Zen and Leland, who was a demi-holy being. Therefore, it was not something an ordinary true god could achieve. It's useless, Zen dejectedly resigned with a bitter smile. Try again, number 9527 replied blandly. Zen nodded, and his expression once again became extremely serious. Buzz. As the golden light around Zen's body became brighter, the invisible soul pressure spurted out of his mind. Emotion closing godly way. He had no other choice but to perform the emotion closing godly way. This time, it was not used for a sword move, but to open his space ring. Under his full strength, a wisp of soul pressure broke through the restriction. Once the soul pressure had broken down the restriction, he instantly poured his spiritual sense into the space ring and tried to pull the stone mouse's corpse out of it. Thump! The stone mouse's corpse was flung on the altar violently. Their attention turned and fixated their gaze on the dead mouse. This corpse, as before, emitted a faint glow. However, it made no other movement. Looks like it didn't work, Zen muttered. Not really. Look, number 9527 sent all the scenes it felt to Zen. The stone mouse's corpse would not rot at all, because after all, it was a magical creature. After the mouse's corpse landed on the altar, its soft hair started to fall off bit by bit. Its body gradually started to rot. Then in the blink of an eye, the dead body had turned into a pile of bones. The white bones immediately decayed as cracks appeared. Soon after, the bones finally turned into a pile of dust and sank into the altar. The altar had then begun to rotate in a slow motion. After it rotated for 3.5 circles, a faint orange light straightaway emerged from its center. Swish, swish. At this moment, Zen suddenly felt that the restriction currently sealing his 6 senses disappeared. He felt dizzy for a moment, but he slowly felt that his senses of touch, smell and hearing were all back. Just as his control on his body was back, the stone mouse on the altar also came back to life. Without any warning, it threw itself at him. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Hatred was evident, filling its bean-sized eyes. It aimed at Zen's cinnabar field. Zen had once been bitten by a stone mouse when he just entered the divine land. At that time, the stone mouse had successfully gotten into his body. But it had struggled, being eroded to death by Zen's chaotic energy. Even if the memories of its previous life flashed to mind, instead of learning from it, the stone mouse seemed to undergo and experience the same fate as soon as it had just been reincarnated. Chapter 2307, Memory Flames. After its last revival, the stone mouse had been at the mid-rank of the true god realm. Back then, even Master Evil couldn't be a match for it, and his body had been effortlessly destroyed by the powerful creature. After another rebirth, the stone mouse's cultivation level descended once again, and it was now at the low rank of the true god realm. Another different thing was that Zen, who had been a proving godly warrior back then, was now a consummate true god. As soon as the stone mouse approached him, Zen reached out in one swift motion and caught the mouse in his hand. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The stone mouse struggled desperately in Zen's hand, its body rolling up and snapping at Zen's fingers. One of the stone mouse's theurgies was that it could move freely through everything. Back then, Zen's body was already strong, but it still couldn't resist the mouse. If Zen's finger was bitten by the stone mouse, it would be torn off without difficulty. Of course, Zen would not allow such a thing to happen. There was no way he would risk any part of his body, not even a single finger. He caught the mouse by its tail and shook it slightly. Before its mouth could reach his fingers, he swung it to the other direction, away from his flesh. No matter how hard it struggled, it couldn't do anything but swing whichever way Zen wanted it to, like a puppet with strings attached to its limbs. Squeak, squeak, squeak. After a few more attempts, the stone mouse finally gave up and started screeching in despair. With its scream permeating the air and echoing off the invisible walls around them, seemingly a call for help, rustling sounds suddenly came from all directions in the darkness in response. Countless green spots of light appeared from the haze of black, followed by the shadows of numerous huge mice. These big mice, strictly speaking, are not the same type of creature as you, right? Zen asked with a knowing smile, looking at those huge mice. Since the stone mouse was a one-of-a-kind true spirit, it was a unique existence and, naturally, it was impossible to have a companion of the same kind. However, it seemed to at least have the power to summon these big mice. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The huge mice, seemingly stupid at first, all started squeaking after they saw Zen at the altar. Their eyes shone bright red when they saw the stone mouse in his hand. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. All mice were nimble and quick despite their large size. The speed at which they moved was nothing short of amazing, and it didn't take long for them to approach Zen. Facing these huge mice, lightning flashed through Zen's eyes. Crack! A bolt of lightning sparked in front of him and hit the first mouse. It swiftly leapt to a nearby mouse, and then to another mouse. In the blink of an eye, the lightning had leapt 100 times through the group of mice, eliminating them one by one. With no resistance to the power of lightning, the mice quivered and dropped dead. Soon, over 100 mice were lying on the ground, motionless, and the smell of burnt fur smothered Zen. He slowly lifted the stone mouse and calmly said, "I know you have the memory of your previous life after every reincarnation. You are very intelligent, so you must understand what I'm saying. I only want to know who set the restriction here." Dangling in the air, the stone mouse stared at Zen with its small eyes. It seemed that it didn't want to reply to him. "Even if you don't tell me, I know it must be Gregorio," Zen continued in a collected voice. "Those who got you before him were not able to set such a powerful restriction. As for those after him, I think they must have been eaten by the huge mice. The problem is, who has Gregorio been incarnated as?" Zen guessed that there were people who had obtained the stone mouse before Gregorio in the past. But they failed to know about the secret of reincarnation, at least not at Gregorio's level. As for those who got the stone mouse after Gregorio, they must have all been eaten up by those huge mice, just like Jalen and others. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The stone mouse kept squeaking, as if it was unable to communicate with Zen at all. Zen looked into its small eyes and sneered. "Playing dumb, okay." He laid it on the altar and pressed on it. "It seems that as long as your corpse is thrown on the altar, you will be reincarnated immediately, and I don't need to wait for a long time. Am I right? Do you want me to try this theory again?" he threatened. After speaking, he pressed one finger on its tail, summoning lightning arcs on his other hand at the same time. The lightning arcs contained his power of consummate thunderstorm godly way, which meant they were extremely powerful and almost invincible. The stone mouse's eyes widened in fear when it sensed its destructive power. Zen's guess was correct. If it died on the altar, it could be reincarnated immediately. The stone mouse was an immortal creature as long as it was within the divine land. It was a very special existence. But even if it could be reincarnated infinitely, it would hate to taste the feeling of being killed again and again. The agony of dying surely wasn't something it would like to experience repeatedly. "Stop. This is the reincarnation land. Up until now, there are only 4 people who have been reincarnated successfully in the divine land. You can check it yourself. Why do you have to torture me like this?" The stone mouse suddenly answered in a sharp voice. Its eyes were full of contempt, having to heed Zen's warning against its will. But although its voice was harsh and strange, Zen understood all of its words. 4 people have been reincarnated successfully, Zen repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Yes, sir," the stone mouse said, sighing in resignation. "Take me there," Zen ordered. Reluctant as it was, the stone mouse had no other choice but to obey Zen's words. It didn't expect that Zen would be able to get rid of the restriction set by Gregorio, let alone massacre the huge mice that came to its rescue. If this place was not discovered by Zen by accident, it would have waited here quietly for its master. The man had promised that he would definitely find it again. There was not only one way to enter the reincarnation land, as the Abyss Demon region was another way, albeit a treacherous path to take. But despite its difficulty and danger, the stone mouse firmly believed that its master would definitely find it again one day. With the mouse's guidance, Zen left the altar and walked into the darkness. After he advanced several thousand feet, a row of low stairs appeared in front of him. He slowly climbed up the steps, and after 200 to 300 steps, he felt a powerful aura emanating ahead. The aura was quite similar to that of a soul, yet Zen knew it was impossible for one's soul to be so powerful. "What's on the steps?" Zen asked curiously. "You'll know it when you reach the end," the stone mouse said. It didn't take long for Zen to finally get to the top of the stairs. As he looked down, he saw millions of orbs floating in the void in front of him. His eyes shone with wonder. The orbs created a huge ocean of light. Even the stars all over the sky paled in comparison to this magnificent sight before him. "What is this?" Zen asked with his mouth slightly open, taken aback by the sheer beauty of the lights. "They are memory flames," number 9527 explained to him before Zen could force the mouse to answer. "The first condition for reincarnation is to get your memory flame. The stone mouse is technically the manager here, the one that makes sure everything is as it should be. This is why even though it died, its cultivation and memory would never disappear. Anyone who wants to be reincarnated needs its help to find their memory flames." Chapter 2308, Reading Memories. Every living being throughout the entire divine land would eventually produce a memory flame. For centuries and centuries, countless living beings had been born into the divine land. Thus, the quantity of memory flames was absolutely unimaginable. There were so many in fact, that they formed an ocean of flames, floating in front of Zen. As soon as number 9527 had finished explaining, a memory flame drifted towards Zen. "Is a memory flame equivalent to a soul?" Zen asked curiously. The theory of reincarnation was very mysterious and unheard of. Zen, on his behalf, was naturally very interested in knowing more. According to his current understanding, a reincarnation was the rebirth of one's soul, and that was why the memory of the previous life remained. "No," number 9527 stated. "Your soul is only your memory's carrier. The memory flame is unique proof of a living being, which records a creature's entire life. The soul would only be the carrier." Zen mumbled his question, deeply lost in his thoughts. Another memory flame, a purple one this time, hovered over to Zen. He stretched out his hand and touched it gently with his fingertips. The memory flame had no tactile impression. His fingers brushed up against nothingness, as if it were just a weak spot of light. As he touched the memory flame, a strange feeling quickly spread from Zen's finger, all the way up to his mind. Buzz! In a split second, his mind was pulled into the memory flame and lost within. Countless pictures suddenly flashed in Zen's mind one after the next, like a speeding slideshow. It was actually a child's memory being displayed. The child was born into the Lai clan. 3,000 Lai clan children were sent to cultivate under a godly way tablet, and this child was amongst them. The child's name was Rohan, and he was only 4 years old back when he was sent for cultivation. However, his talent in the elementary fire godly way field was unparalleled. Clearly, age wasn't a factor, at least not in this case. At the tender and young age of 4, he had already become a proving godly warrior and was capable of obtaining the qualification for cultivating under the elementary fire godly way tablet. Needless to say, this child was considered a Lai clan treasure. He was very precious. In 1,000 years no less, our clan will definitely be welcoming a new demi-holy being. Our clan should recommend him to the Fang clan and give him permission to cultivate on the floating island. Perhaps, with Rohan's help, of course, we'll be crowned as one of the more powerful clans on the floating islands. The Lai clan elders had high hopes for Rohan's future. And they had every reason to have such aspirations. Numerous pictures in the memory flame continued flashing in Zen's mind. Zen could understand all kinds of different emotions felt by this child throughout his lifetime, from his pride to fear, sorrow to happiness. And even the child's comprehension of the elementary fire godly way. Such a comprehension is incredibly helpful when it comes to cultivation, Zen muttered to himself, as his heart skipped a beat. A warrior's cultivation was based on constant, deliberate comprehension. The memory flame had recorded Rohan's unique perception of the elementary fire godly way. Feeling it all in this way, through his entire body, was almost equal to cultivating the godly way by oneself. In fact, the effect was even better than most people's self-cultivation. After all, it was safe to say that the majority of the warriors in the divine land were mediocre. Only very few talents like Rohan existed here. Although this kind of experience wasn't necessarily of much use to Zen, to other true gods, it was simply a source of unimaginable cultivation resources. If it were possible for anyone else to come here and regularly read the memory flames in order to inherit experience about cultivation through memories, their cultivation base would improve greatly with half the effort. Every single memory flame contained a warrior's complete and rich experience about cultivation. This place was completely loaded with memory flames. If one could make full use of the memory flames, their cultivation speed would improve to a never-before-seen level, their powers horribly strong. A proving godly warrior might even be capable of becoming a top-rank true god or even attaining the consummation of true god realm in a short time. The elementary fire godly way, Zen said at once. The crux is the fire's flexibility. Everyone and anyone who cultivates this godly way should remain calm and concentrated, he continued. Just as Zen was trying to pry deeper into Rohan's cultivation memory, the continuous images from the child's memory suddenly stopped without warning. The very last image that Zen saw was a white saber cutting Rohan's neck. "Dad, I've been murdered by my uncle." This was the last message Rohan had sent out using his soul power before he died, and these were the very last words Zen heard Rohan speak. Buzz. When Zen was finished reading the child's memories, Rohan's memory flame slowly drifted away, bobbing up and down into the distance. He sighed in pity as he stared at the memory flame. He just couldn't take his eyes off it. Rohan was obviously a great talent, one of a kind even. He had died so young though, he wasn't even 10. The little boy had been savagely murdered by his uncle, which was the result of the Lai clan disputes. From the memory flame however, Zen didn't feel any resentment coming from the child. After all, Rohan was only a gifted and innocent child. Despite being killed by his own uncle, the little boy didn't appear resentful. Zen couldn't help but wonder what had happened to the Lai clan after such a passing. What Zen didn't know was that the Lai clan actually used to be a first-tier clan with a strong population in the northern part of the Divine Land. That, however, didn't last. Certain warriors would even say that the Lai clan was only inferior to the largest clans of the floating islands. The Lai clan had 2 demi-holy beings guarding them, and at the time, it might have been one of the most powerful clans, with the possibility of owning a floating island in the more recent divine eras. Rohan's tragedy had triggered a series of strife in the clan instead, sending them spindling down a different turn of events. Their clan leader had been assassinated, and all clan members of one main branch had equally been killed. In the end, both demi-holy beings ended up fighting against each other, raising trouble. Both of them were wounded greatly in the battle and still hadn't regained their full strength back. Slowly but surely, Rohan's memory flame drifted further and further away from Zen. Zen stuck out his finger in order to touch another memory flame. Buzz. Zen knew what to expect this time around. The second his finger connected with the flame, his mind was immediately absorbed whole. This memory flame belonged to a divine citizen in a remote mountain village. There wasn't anything special to be discovered in this person's memory. This divine citizen had never left the mountain he called home in his entire life. He hadn't even entered a divine city. Ultimately, he found himself involved in a war among the clans and died. Zen was highly concentrated on reading the memories. He wasn't paying attention to anything else going on around him. As his mind was lost in yet another memory flame, a cunning glint hastily flashed in the stone mouse's eyes. The stone mouse looked off into the distance. Different people's memory flames were divided into different levels. The longer a person lived, the more they remembered, and thus, the brighter their memory flames would be. A few true gods lived for dozens of divine eras, and their memories were countless times larger than those of an ordinary warrior. Such a true god had lived and experienced so much more. Beneath the stone mouse's control, certain bright memory flames out in the ocean of countless light spots slowly moved toward Zen. Zen, of course, didn't take any notice because he was still reading the memory flames surrounding him. Generally speaking, most people's memories were very boring and had no interest to him whatsoever. After all, the majority of the people living in the divine land were ordinary divine citizens. They had led an ordinary and peaceful life, and had never practiced cultivation at all. What they wanted, and what they had obtained, was a stable and carefree life. Without the godly way's power, they had no infinite longevity. After their lifespans reached their ends, they quietly died in a corner of the divine land without saying a word or bothering anyone. This memory flame's owner died in the soul wilderness. Zen stated to himself in surprise. The memory flame that he inadvertently fell upon was from a consummate true god of the Mu clan. This man had explored the soul wilderness a whole 15 divine eras ago. Back then, Estelle hadn't controlled the soul wilderness yet. The man eventually died in a fierce competition within the Forbidden Land. The moment Zen snapped out from the memory flame, the stone mouse's eyes were quick to gleam with cunningness. At the same time, No 9527's consciousness sent him a message, Zen. Watch out. In the ocean of memory flames, countless bright memory flames were gathered into a river. Out of nowhere, the river flow began to speed up and it was headed directly for Zen. Chapter 2309, Kill It. The memory flames surrounded Zen on all sides. They were, however, essentially harmless. They were disembodied entities, but they were not souls. They were the engravings, the marks that etched themselves onto souls to record one's life. Zen knew he didn't need to take any precautions against these intangible entities. However, every memory flame contained a countless number of memories, and memories were powerful things. These particular memory flames moved like waves, and were chosen personally by the stone mouse. When the memory flames washed towards Zen, all the memories they contained entered his soul at once. In the span of less than a second, dozens of images flooded his soul and his mind, all at the same time. Desire, power, medicine, refinement, remote mountains, the sky. All kinds of scenes, involving work, daily life, thoughts and feelings, were surging through his soul wildly. Zen's soul was unable to absorb all of these memories in such a short time, and he felt like his head was about to explode. The surface of his soul had already started to crack. If another person had been overwhelmed like this by the memory flames, their soul would have broken down very quickly. As Zen was being attacked by the memory flames, the stone mouse left and rushed down the steps. How careless of you, whispered number 9527 in Zen's mind. As much as it wanted to leave Zen to his own devices, the situation was dire and number 9527 had no choice but to manipulate Zen again. Then, under No 9527's control, Zen kicked his legs violently and his whole body rolled backwards. Bang, bang, bang. He rolled until he reached the steps, and then proceeded to tumble down them. The memory flames that had rushed towards Zen couldn't reach the steps. They continued to circle just above the steps before slowly returning to the sea of memory flame. Zen, meanwhile, having tumbled all the way downwards, rolled to a stop at the foot of the stairs. For a moment, he kept still, lying on the ground and staring blankly at the ceiling as the massive torrent of memories continued to flash across his mind. Zen, are you okay? Number 9527 shouted anxiously. As the minutes went by, Zen gradually regained his normal senses. I'm okay, it's nothing, but it was so dangerous just now. I was complacent, again. Zen's face betrayed his shaken state. He had not expected the memory flames to have so much power. That mouse. Zen immediately stood up and rose into the air. Floating in midair, he stretched out his hand and gave it a flick. A small fireball rolled right out of his outstretched palm. The little fireball was flung into the air, and as it flew, it burned like a comet, growing larger and larger as it hurtled through space. Splash! As it continued to burn and gather speed, the fireball turned blue, emitting heat and light so intense. It made the darkness around them bright as day. Now that the region was bathed in light, they could see that they were standing amidst the ruins of a palace. Pillars, arches, and the remains of a moat surrounded them. In front of them stood a crumbling old staircase leading to what used to be 3 altars. The altar in the middle, the largest of the 3, must have been the place where the stone mouse had been reincarnated. A level above the 3 altars was a huge metal door. On either side of it stood a statue with 3 heads and 6 arms. It was a statue that Zen was very familiar with. Isn't that Chiyu's statue? Zen rolled his eyes in surprise. He knew perfectly well what the statue was. However, Zen had more urgent problems to deal with than stare at a door. He had to find that irksome mouse first. Now, the stone mouse only had the strength of a low-rank true god. A being with that level of strength like the stone mouse could run away when Zen was attacked by the memory flames. However, it wouldn't get far. Zen's gaze swept the area, and surely, he located the figure of the stone mouse, scurrying away hastily, not far away from where he stood. Crack! Zen flapped the wings on his back and rose into the air. Before long, he had caught up with the fleeing stone mouse. Seeing that Zen was pursuing it, the stone mouse rolled on the ground, its eyes turning bright red. A mirage formed above the mouse, which then rushed towards Zen like a ghost. This illusion was a secret method used to control one's soul. Zen already had experience with this particular weapon. While following Leland and his group, Zen had been hit by it after having been too careless. But now, Zen would not let down his guard, not for a second. Even if the stone mouse used the hallucinatory fragrance to attack him, it would be a vain effort. Zen dodged the illusion with ease, and flicked his finger as he did so. Crack! He raised a thunder whip and lashed at the stone mouse. The immense power of the thunder whip blasted the stone mouse straight up into the air. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Please don't kill me, pleaded the stone mouse in a strange voice. Zen, however, disregarded these pleas. He did not hesitate, maintaining his assault. He knew how manipulative this little creature could be. Clap, clap, clap. Zen didn't stop until he had given the mouse over a dozen lashes. The stone mouse's body had turned black after having been hit by the thunder and lightning. The air was heavy with the stench of singed hair and flesh. Zen walked over to the stone mouse and poked it. Obviously dead, it did not respond. Then, Zen picked up the corpse of the stone mouse, walked determinedly to the altar and slammed the mouse onto it. Buzz! Just like the last time, the dead body of the stone mouse immediately decayed, as if time had been sped up. The ashes spread across the surface and dissolved into the altar. However, after a few seconds, a wind stirred the surface of the altar, and lifted the ashes into the air. Soon, like a phoenix, the stone mouse was reborn. Zen had guessed right. In theory, the stone mouse was essentially immortal. However, after each resurrection, the mouse's cultivation base seemed to fall a little. Now, it was the same level as a proving godly warrior's cultivation base. Squeak! Don't kill me, begged the mouse again. Realizing what Zen intended to do, it resorted to begging for mercy. Zen pointed his finger at the stone mouse. I am not interested in killing you. But you leave me no choice. Every time we meet, you try to kill me. The stone mouse had already fooled him once with the illusion in the past. Zen wouldn't allow that to happen again. If it weren't for 9527, Zen could have been torn apart by those big mice. The stone mouse had also manipulated those memory flames, which had nearly made Zen's soul collapse. Zen knew he couldn't trust anything it said. Zen didn't care if he had to kill this mouse 100 times over. Now, however, seeing the cold determination in Zen's eyes, the stone mouse suddenly became meek and deferential. It squeaked sheepishly for a while and then looked at Zen with big, pleading eyes. I was just following my master's orders. He wants to control the entire reincarnation land and won't stand for anyone else to occupy it. Isn't your master Gregorio? Zen asked. Yes, I must warn you that you will never be able to kill me. Squeaked the mouse shakily. My master will come back soon. You will be the one who is dead by then. I will even erase your memory flame, so that you can never be reincarnated. The stone mouse spoke as if it were trying to convince itself of being in control more than it was trying to threaten Zen. Zen could see right through the mouse's pretense. He smiled. And what if I manage to take control of the reincarnation land? Scoffed Zen condescendingly. Squeak, you, the stone mouse said with a disbelieving sneer. Even my master is not qualified, let alone you. It exclaimed, its voice becoming more high-pitched with every word. Zen was suddenly curious. What qualifications do I need? He asked, frowning. The reincarnation land was established specially for the 9 Li race to be reincarnated. If you want to control this place, the blood of the 9 Li race must flow through your veins. The stone mouse answered desperately. Hearing this, Zen was slightly stunned, but a small, triumphant smile lifted the edges of his lips. At the same time, number 9527 spoke, it's almost the same as what I guessed. The divine land was opened by Chiyu, so he naturally wanted to use it for the reincarnation of his people. But at some point, something must have gone wrong. That must be why Gregorio has owned the stone mouse. This little mouse does not serve the 9 Li race. It also acknowledges Gregorio as its owner and follows him loyally of its own will. You might be right, Zen said to number 9527 in agreement, his mind immersed deep in thought. Chapter 2310, 9 Statues. Zen glanced at the 2 altars beside him, then he looked at the stone mouse and asked, why is there nothing on those 2 altars? The stone mouse squeaked and replied, the jade scale butterfly and the flame blood vulture are supposed to be on the 2 altars. They have the same mission as me, but they have never been reincarnated in all these years. Flame blood vulture. Zen had come across this name when he had read through the ancient books on the floating island of the Han clan. But the record in the ancient books about the flame blood vulture was not very clear. It only mentioned that the flaming blood vulture was something that had appeared in the extremely ancient remote ages. As for the jade scale butterfly, he had never heard of it. The stone mouse had to have its corpse thrown back on the altar if it wanted to be reincarnated. It was very likely that these two unique true spirits had died in some corner of the divine land and no one had ever discovered them. Zen glanced at the door again. Does one have to enter that door to gain control over this reincarnation land? That's right. Anyone who wants to rule this reincarnation land can only do so by entering that door first, answered the stone mouse obediently. Back then, the owner of the stone mouse had entered the door, but he had not been acknowledged. It was not because he was not strong enough, but because of the problem of the bloodline. But in Zen's case, the stone mouse actually wanted him to enter. If he could be killed inside, it would be perfect. In that case, please get some rest first, Zen said faintly. Rest? The stone mouse was stunned by his suggestion. Just as it was recovering from the shock, Zen lightly patted its head wickedly. The stone mouse's cultivation was equal to that of a proving godly warrior. How could it resist Zen at all? A stream of power poured into the stone mouse's head and it exploded immediately. It was dead again. Zen didn't throw its corpse back to the altar this time, but put it in his space ring. The stone mouse was still very loyal to Gregorio, so Zen would be uneasy if he just left it outside. No one knew what kind of trouble it would make if it was left unsupervised. After trapping the stone mouse in his ring, Zen walked past the 3 altars and headed straight for the huge door. Upon reaching the top of the stairs, Zen flicked his finger. A fireball was produced, which shot into the air and exploded again. Boom! The enormous door was illuminated as bright as the sun under the light of the explosion. What a mammoth door! Exclaimed Zen as he looked up at it. He had noticed from afar that the door was huge, but it was only after he got close did he discover just how high it really was. It was unlike anything he had ever imagined. It was over 100,000 feet high from the ground, tall enough for a mighty mountain to be stuffed within it. Zen placed his hands on the huge door and took a momentary pause to prepare himself. Then he began to slowly activate his strength. Break open. His physical strength was unleashed and it circulated and gushed forth into Zen's hands, transferring over to the huge door. When he pushed the door with all his might, the sculpture with 3 heads and 6 arms on the gate began to glow. Chiyu's lifelike eyes shone with a deep red luster, as if 2 gems were embedded in his sockets. However, the door remained motionless. The door is so heavy. Zen's eyes narrowed. Zen's physical strength was more powerful than that of an ordinary consummate true god, or about the same as that of a demi-holy being. But even so he was still unable to push the door open. Strength source. His eyes flashed, and the power in his inner world surged and coursed through his veins. Open! With a dull roar, a ginormous force was released from his arms. On the door, the red light that was emitting from Chiyoyu's eyes became brighter, but the obstinate door still did not budge. That's so weird. Zen was staring at the door with his eyes wide open in disbelief. The strength source in his inner world, coupled with his physical strength, would make his overall strength on par with that of a holy being. Gregorio had been able to push this door open back then, so there was no reason for Zen to fail. Naturally, he couldn't figure out why it was so difficult for him. If my guess is correct, Chiyu's eyes on this door should be the limit stone. So it doesn't need too much power to push it away, number 9527 suddenly said. Limit stone? What do you mean? Zen asked. Number 9527 smiled and said, the limit stone is just a small trick to detect your maximum strength. It needs you to exert your strength to its maximum limit. Even if your strength is not too great, you can still push open the door. The purpose of the giant door is not to block you outside, but merely to observe your maximum power. Really? Zen had a skeptic expression. He did feel the pair of eyes watching him closely when he pushed the door. Could it be true? Did the limit stone really have such an ability? Clearly, some things in the source world were truly beyond Zen's imagination. Zen didn't waste any more time pondering over it. He softly whispered, grow. Swish swash. Zen's figure began to increase. Back when the 9-Li race left the Sky Spirit Bone Tower, they had distributed the wild bones in the Sky Spirit Bone Tower, leaving a part of the wild bones for the 9-Li people in the Sky Spirit Bone Tower to use. The remaining, which was a sizable chunk, was distributed to those who left. Zen had also obtained a considerable number of wild bones during the distribution. After he returned to the Divine Land, Zen would absorb the wild bones whenever he had time, and his cultivation at the level of Wild God was also slowly increasing. In the blink of an eye, Zen's figure had soared up to 60,000 feet high. Although this gate was over 100,000 feet high, it looked almost the same with Zen in terms of size. Thump, thump, Zen pounded on the door with his 2 huge hands, one left and one right. The turbulent force thrust forward as he unleashed all his strength. In addition to the wild god power, the force in his inner world was also activated at the same time. Zen had gone all out for it, he had pushed all his strength to the limit. Open, Zen shouted, exhaling heavily. However, his roar was like a clap of thunder which spread quickly across the world. This roar had even stirred up the memory flames in the distance. The originally calm memory flames began to float in the sea. At this moment, the red light in Chiyu's eyes vanished. And then it flashed again. This time it started emitting a dark green luster. Click, the gears shifted and a jarring sound rang out, followed by a rumble. The two gates began to open inwards with a groan. When the door opened just a crack, Zen stopped pushing. He shoved the door a smidge just enough to get in, so there was no need to open the door fully. The slit in the entryway was now over 100 feet wide. His wild god body was too large to enter, but after returning to his normal size, it would be wide enough for him to get in. Swish! After Zen withdrew the wild god power, he slipped in through the crack. When he walked in the door, a billowing cloud of dust rose up instantly, obstructing his vision. As the door had been closed for too long, a thick layer of dust had settled everywhere. Spiritual wind, blow. Zen spat gently, looking at the blanket of dust. His breath turned into a hurricane that flew past the world inside the door. All the dust inside was quickly swept away. As the dust dissipated, 9 colossal statues slowly appeared in front of Zen. Chapter 2311, Contaminated Blood. The first statue took Chiyu's shape. Zen was very well familiar with it since he had witnessed the same occurrence a couple of times. But it was the first time he had seen the other 8 statues. The 8 statues differed in shape. For instance, the second statue's head was like a bull's. A pair of horns almost took up half of its head. On its back was a double-headed axe, making its appearance look fearless. The third statue's head was like an eagle's. It had wings on its back and a pair of 3-pronged spears on its hands. The fourth statue. These 8 people's statues are listed beside Chiyu's. Are they the leaders of the 9 tribes of the 9 Li race? Zen muttered and questioned. The 9 Li race had 9 tribes, hence its name. Chiyu was the head of 9 tribes, so he was called the Grand Chieftain. Yes, you are right, number 9527 replied. Zen's eyes flashed as he heard this answer. How do you know that? Of course I know. My master was very observant in the source world. After all, the 9 Li race was well known. How could I not know? But you, Chiyu's descendant, know nothing. Number 9527 laughed. Zen felt a little embarrassed. Since he didn't grow up in the source world, he rarely knew anything about it. Look at that guy who looks like a bull. His name is Harvey Lee. The bull head is not his original appearance, but just a mask. He is so powerful and reckless that he doesn't listen to anybody except Chiyu. The one who looks like an eagle is called Ambrose Lee, and the following ones are. Zen silently memorized the names of the 8 people in his heart as he listened to all the information being said. After thinking for a moment, he asked, but why are the leaders of the 9 Li tribes here? I don't know. I am a wisp of my master's soul, not Chiyu's. I can't have a full guess of what is in his mind, number 9527 responded. Hearing its response, Zen smiled. Number 9527 had been following Zen for a short time. It appeared to be dull at the very beginning, but the current had already learned and had gained its own personality. The 9 statues were lined up in a row, and right in the middle was a dark passage. Zen took a step and moved along the passage. Just as he passed Chiyu's statue, the entire hall started to vibrate. Rumble. The eyes on the statues had suddenly begun to glow. Faint yellow small balls appeared at the same time above the statues' heads. They were rotating flexibly, emitting great power. The formidable power was spread and he was instantly enveloped by it. His face showed a vigilant look and he took 2 steps back. Just as he was forced to move back, he noticed a human-shaped gray shadow that appeared in the center of the hall. It stood upright in the center as its neck, which was formed by the gray shadow, quickly stretched out until it reached him. As soon as it was right in front of him, a dry voice rang out from the depths of the hall. Whoever enters the reincarnation hall can choose one of the secret thurgies before leaving. Zen stared at the gray human figure in front of him and asked, "Who are you?" I'm the soul guarding the reincarnation hall," the shadow responded. I see. Zen went silent and thought for a while. It's almost the same as those weapon spirits, number 9527 explained. It can be considered as a soul, the same as the weapon spirits. It has been living for a long time, so it is quite difficult to communicate with it. The underlying meaning behind No 9527's words was that it itself was much more capable and stronger than this kind of soul. Zen couldn't help but smile and asked, "What are the secret thurgies?" "Look." The shadow's arm stretched out all the way to the top of the 9 statues. Its finger pointed at the rotating small balls as it revealed, "These are the secret thurgies. They can be used once, and they will be triggered at critical moments." They sounded like some magic weapons for life-saving. Zen's gaze swept past the small balls and found that there was no small ball on the 7th statue. "Why is the small ball on that statue gone?" "It has been picked by someone," the soul answered back. "Do you mean Gregorio Yu?" Zen asked to confirm his thought. "Yes, he said his name was Gregorio Yu," the soul answered automatically. "It seems that the stone mouse didn't lie to me about this," Zen thought in his mind, but his real target was more than that. He didn't know what these secret thurgies were, but he had had many ways to save his life. "What if I want to control the reincarnation land?" Zen bluntly asked. The soul became silent for a few seconds after his straightforward question. It took a while before the silence was broken as the entire hall began to shake again. Rumble. Something constantly surged on the ground, and a loud roar was heard from afar. The floor, which was paved with thick cubic stones, unceasingly quaked. The cubic stones continued to rise and fall. The thing in the distance made a movement and in a flash moved in front of Zen. It was a square container the size of a cubic stone on the ground. At the edge of the delicate container was a groove where a golden red sharp knife was placed. The knife was shining with sharp light. It simply signified that it was by no means an ordinary weapon. The reincarnation hall is an important place of the divine land. The person in charge needs to have the blood of the 9 Li race. If you want to try it, you need to have your blood tested, the soul spoke in a faint voice. What the soul said had made Zen slightly raise his eyebrows. Chiyu surely had made a well-thought plan. This place was in charge of and was responsible for the reincarnation secret of the entire divine land, so it couldn't be controlled by the outsiders. Gregorio was the first person to get the stone mouse. He was eager to rule the reincarnation land, but was unfortunately stuck in the last step. He was not even from the 9 Li race, so he was doomed to fail. The people from the 9 Li race had long perished in the divine land. Even if Gregorio was a holy being, it was difficult for him to find the blood of the 9 Li race. Zen made up his mind and naturally wouldn't miss such a good chance. Without hesitation, he picked up the knife. Swish! The knife was so sharp that it could easily cut Zen's finger even if his body was firm. Tinkle! A drop of golden blood dropped into the container and kept rolling at the bottom. It rolled for a long time before it dispersed and disappeared at the bottom of the container. For a short while, there was a pause. The soul spoke, "You are a member of our 9 Li race, but your blood has been contaminated." Hearing this, Zen frowned. How could my blood be contaminated? Back in the universe, Zen's blood had been replaced by a golden one. But despite the blood transfusion, his blood was still pure. As the soul of the hall mentioned that his blood had been tainted, he felt dejected. "Why?" "It's because my master's blood has blended with yours," number 9527 reminded. A sudden realization came to mind as he remembered that in the Sky Spirit Bone Tower, his body was injected with the blood of the Chaos Ancient God. It was during the time when he activated the Blood Wild Body. It all made sense. The blood in his body now was not pure. Chapter 2312, Crow. Zen stared at the soul of the hall and continued his questions. Will my tainted blood still be qualified to control the incarnation hall? Yes, the soul replied. If you pass the test, you are still qualified to control the reincarnation hall, but you cannot use the reincarnation soul weapon. The reincarnation soul weapon? Zen asked, his gaze narrowing. What is it used for? The reincarnation soul weapon can wake the memory flame of any creature in all their lives, the soul answered. Wake the memory flame? What do you mean? Zen was confused at the soul's words and couldn't make head nor tail of them. Yes, it can wake the memory flame of any creature in all their lives, it repeated. But Zen was still at a loss. Number 9527 spoke up, I see. The divine land has used the rule of endless reincarnation. It looks like Chiyu has placed great hopes on the divine land. Endless reincarnation? What's this? Zen said, surprised yet again. He was realizing that he had encountered an alien domain of knowledge. When one creates a world, there are two kinds of reincarnation rules. The first is the one-time reincarnation rule, under which one can only inherit the memories of the previous life, and each living creature has only one chance of reincarnation, number 9527 continued to explain. After this chance of reincarnation is used, the memory flame will disappear completely. What about endless reincarnation? Zen asked. Under the rule of endless reincarnation, a memory flame is born every time one dies. All creatures can retrieve the memory flame of any of their previous lives, number 9527 said, smiling faintly. So in theory, creatures who are qualified to have the endless reincarnation will never die. Really? Zen said, surprised. Of course, number 9527 said. The rule of endless reincarnation applies to any perfect worlds that the powerful masters have built in the source world. Once the most powerful extraordinary creatures had created grand worlds in the chaos, they would then continuously select talents in the grand worlds. Many geniuses with powerful talents would probably die before they were fully grown. However, with endless reincarnation, the talents that died could be reincarnated for unlimited times. Every reincarnation was a process of accumulating, a very complicated system behind it. Every death was a process of cultivation, and with the accumulation of numerous reincarnations, these talents would eventually stand out one day. The benefits of endless reincarnation were pretty obvious. But it was not easy to build a perfect world with endless reincarnation. Many powerful masters had tried and failed. And it hadn't been easy for Chiyu to have achieved this in the Divine Land. So you mean to say that all the dead people in the Divine Land can retrieve their memory flames? And the 9 Li race is no exception. Zen's body began to tremble. Zen did not know the tens of thousands of 9 Li people who had died, but they still belonged to the same race as him. If he could revive them. Theoretically speaking, yes, number 9527 answered. But according to the soul of the hall, the key seems to be the reincarnation soul weapon. And you, who have an impure bloodline, cannot use the soul weapon. Pure bloodline. The only person Zen knew who had pure 9 Li blood was his mother. If he retrieved the soul weapon and gave it to his mother, then they could revive all the 9 Li members. At this thought, Zen became even more excited. He hadn't expected a mere stone mouse to lead to so many things. Excited as he was, Zen asked, what kind of reincarnation rule does the source world follow? The source world, number 9527 smiled. The rule the source world follows is the same as that of the chaos. No one can break that cold rigid rule. When one's soul is destroyed, their memory will also disappear. And no one can be reincarnated in this truth. If one dies, then they die eternally. Zen nodded silently. He had finally begun to figure out the so-called reincarnation mystery. The reincarnation was not as complicated as Zen had thought it to be. It was only that all the memories one had saved from birth till death would be copied by the Divine Land, which then became the memory flame. Once a living creature died, if the memory flame returned to the soul of a certain creature, it would be considered a successful case of reincarnation. Chiyu had created a perfect reincarnation land, but it had not been used by the 9 Li race. Or it could also be that the Yellow Emperor guards had launched an all-out attack on the Divine Land before the 9 Li race could find this place, causing the 9 Li race to lose any chance of reincarnation. If one 9 Li member with a pure bloodline controlled the reincarnation soul weapon, all the members of the 9 Li race could be reincarnated successfully. Zen and number 9527 were communicating with each other through their consciousness. The hall soul had been waiting for a long time by now. Are you going to take the test, young man? The voice of the hall soul sounded again. There was no trace of impatience in the voice. Zen's eyes flashed. Yes, of course. Very well. Follow me. The hall soul turned around and walked away. Its figure floated in the air like smoke. Zen also floated up and followed closely behind the soul. Zen and the hall soul passed the huge statues, and finally reached the end of the reincarnation hall. There stood a gray wall, underneath which was a golden bronze door. The door opened automatically when Zen walked towards it. Get in, young man. And let me remind you. This is a cruel test and you may die as you undergo it. But according to the rules, I will give you a chance to be reincarnated, the hall soul said. Zen nodded, smiling. He didn't want to be reincarnated, which meant that he would have to start everything all over again. According to number 9527, the memory flame worked to record a creature's past in the Divine Land. If that was the case, the memory flame that belonged to him might only record his memories in the Divine Land, and every other memory he had in the universe would probably be wiped out. But no matter what would happen, he was determined to take the reincarnation soul weapon. Zen stepped inside the golden bronze door without hesitation. It was dark inside. Bang! Once the bronze door had closed behind him, a beam of light appeared in the distance, like dawn on the horizon, rising quickly. The entire place lit up in the blink of an eye, accompanied by a thunderous sound that shook the ground. I had wanted to leave a wisp of soul in the divine land to protect my people, but the Yellow Emperor is skilled in tracing souls. It's easy for him to locate the divine land through my soul. So I gave up that idea. In this test, I will represent myself as a magical crow. So if you happen to chance upon a magical crow, know that it's me. Zen looked in the direction from which the voice had sounded, a strange expression taking its place on his face. The voice was coming from a crow with curly fur. Chapter 2313, The Test. Quack, quack, the magical crow croaked as it stood on a golden branch. Noticing Zen's gaze, it said, "Don't you hear me? I represent the Grand Chieftain. As a member of the Nine Li race, you should kneel down to show your respect." Zen's eyebrows creased as he asked, "Even a member of imperial lineage has to kneel? You have imperial-grade bloodline." The magical crow was taken aback by Zen's words. It suddenly let out a weird scream and fell down from the golden branch. It flapped its wings and flew back to the branch. After staring at Zen for a long time, it pecked at the branch. Boom! A cubic stone carrying a container on it rose from the branch. It appeared that it was the vessel used to test Zen's blood just now. "You really have the imperial-grade bloodline. Has the Nine Li race reduced to such a point? Is it necessary for the royal family to personally control the reincarnation? Besides, you keep me waiting too long, don't you?" The magical crow continued to flutter its wings while crying out in surprise. It seemed that it had been locked up here for too long a time. In other words, it had never left since Chiyu placed it here. Just like the Hall Soul, it had been waiting for someone from the Nine Li race to rule the reincarnation hall. However, the time it took for them to wait had already been too long. "All the Nine Li people in the Divine Land have been killed," Zen revealed in response. "All of them have been killed? It's impossible." The magical crow fluttered its black wings and let out a strange scream. Its expression showed a look of disbelief. "That's true. They were killed by the Yellow Emperor guards," Zen continued. "How could this happen?" The magical crow mumbled. It constantly jumped up and down on the golden branch. Zen at this time didn't bother to continue to talk to the bird, and asked directly, "Can we start the test now?" "What's the hurry?" the magical crow complained. It was already enjoying having its finger in every pie, but the current situation reminded it of its duty. It had to preside over the test. Urged by Zen, it flew away from the golden branch and floated to the top of the space. Making a move, it spread its black wings and a string of golden light flashed down from the back of its wings. The test had begun. At this point, the space inside the door was slowly changing into a different world. Bang, bang, bang. Flags waved in the distance, and loud drums were heard being loudly struck. 1,000,000 generals and soldiers appeared and were standing side by side. Their eyes were looking at Zen as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Mortals. Zen's eyes flashed. The generals and soldiers were just mortals. Their number was indeed large, but no matter how many they were nothing to him as he considered them as ants. Given Zen's strength, they were even weaker than ants. Such a test was beyond his expectation. "Kill, kill, kill," the generals shouted and gave the command. "Who, who, who?" The war horns sounded. The army of mortals marched and rushed towards Zen like raging waves on the sea. Zen raised his hand gently when they were still a few miles away. Whoosh! A lightning bolt was shot out. The lightning flashed past the crowd 4 or 5 times, and the army of 1,000,000 people had collapsed. 1 against 1,000,000, he was sure outnumbered, but it was certainly a piece of cake for him to defeat them. He fought back with ease, but he was still bothered in confusion. According to the magical crow's words, the test had been personally organized by Chiyu. It couldn't be so simple. Just as Zen was puzzled, faint dots of light appeared in the bodies of the 1,000,000 mortals that had been struck to death by the lightning bolt. The memory flames, he muttered and recognized them at a glance. Just as the memory flames left the bodies of the mortals who had been killed, their bodies also disappeared. At this time, he was facing 1,000,000 memory flames. It was the same number of people he had just killed. Whoosh, 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 the memory flames flocked towards Zen. Seeing so many of them, he felt a little nervous. He had already encountered and had been attacked by memory flames outside the reincarnation hall. The result of the fight wasn't good. They had almost destroyed his soul. It happened in a flash that the memory flames totally engulfed Zen's brain and sank into his soul. These memory flames are not as powerful as I think. He was not overpowered, but he was actually absorbing them. Although the number of memory flames was not small, their owners were only mortals. The lifespans of the mortals were limited. They only lived until they reached over 30 to 50 years of age, so they didn't have many memories. They were different from the true gods in the divine land whose memories lasted several divine eras. Even so, he was still in trouble. The memory flames still had inserted a lot of messy memories in his mind. Zen shook his head and tried to forget the memories imparted on his brain. Quack, quack, the magical crow in the sky cawed as it glanced at Zen and said, "The second wave." Swish, with a wave of its wings, another ray of golden light fell. The whole world changed for the second time. A stretching and undulating mountain appeared in front of Zen. On the mountain stood 10,000 warriors at the Soul Sea realm. 10,000 warriors at the Soul Sea realm. He grasped the current situation as he prepared for another fight. Kill, kill, kill. All of the Soul Sea realm cultivators soared in the air and swooped down from the mountain. They had already been able to create their soul seas, and their strength had already undergone a qualitative leap. The strength of 10,000 powerful warriors at the Soul Sea realm couldn't be easily underestimated. In the face of such an attack, Zen narrowed his eyes slightly and an invisible force condensed into a flying sword. Swish, 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 the invisible flying sword swept past the sky at a lightning speed. The warriors in turn could not resist the attack at all. They would die as soon as their bodies were touched by the invisible flying sword. They had managed to launch various attacks on Zen, but he was calm and didn't avoid every bit of them. He just let them attack, but it appeared that their attacks didn't hurt him at all. After a short while, he had killed all the warriors. The same scene that happened to the mortals took place once again. Memory flames erupted from the bodies of the dead warriors. However, this time, the flames were much brighter than those of the mortals. After all, a warrior at the Soul Sea realm could live for tens of thousands of years, so the memories recorded in the memory flames were far more than those of a mortal. The memory flames of 10,000 warriors at the Soul Sea realm were much more powerful than those of the mortals. Swish, 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 with so many memory flames entering his mind, Zen felt a little pressure. But he could still handle it with ease. The third wave, quack, quack. The voice of Magical Crow resounded, and the world in front of him changed for the third time. This time, true gods appeared in front of him. He looked around and there were 1,000 low-rank true gods. Zen was under increasing pressure in the face of the attacks of 1,000 low-rank true gods. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the blink of an eye, he was surrounded by the low-rank true gods. Then all sorts of internal momentum surged up. These low-rank true gods cultivate different kinds of godly ways. Zen's expression was complicated as his eyes flashed. The 1,000 low-rank true gods cultivated 1,000 kinds of godly ways. Chapter 2314, Refining the Reincarnation Soul Weapon. Since each of the low-rank true gods had only comprehended the first two levels of a godly way, their internal momentum was not complete. However, Zen couldn't contain his excitement. The internal momentum of godly ways from these low-rank true gods couldn't light up the godly way tablets in Zen's mind. However, it could light up the scales on the infinity ruler. The infinity ruler. The edge of Zen's eyes began to flicker with a faint golden light. Trying hard to absorb the internal momentum, Zen failed. Why can't I absorb the internal momentum of these low-rank true gods? Zen wondered, narrowing his eyes. This place might be a huge illusion, and for some reason, it seemed like the infinity ruler was unable to absorb the internal momentum in the illusion. Zen tried hard to think about this, while the low-rank true gods started displaying all kinds of theurgies. In fact, the joint power of 1,000 low-rank true gods was undoubtedly extraordinary. Focusing on dealing with them, Zen dared not let his guard down. He might appear to be outnumbered, but his skills would have things in his favor. 5 minutes later, Zen finally killed every low-rank true god who attacked him. It was a test which was indeed very difficult for ordinary consummate true gods to accomplish. Bearing the impact of the memory flames would make them under great pressure. Even the most powerful consummate true gods, like Troy and Rochelle, would find it difficult. Death would dawn upon them if they were not cautious enough. But it was another story for Zen. He didn't find any difficulty in the task at all. The more rounds he experienced, the more relaxed Zen became. In the last round, he was able to take out 3 consummate true gods on his own in just a minute. Quack, quack, quack. After Zen passed the last test, the magical crow fluttered its wings and jumped down from the sky towards him. With imperial-grade bloodline, you are really so powerful, the magical crow said in a sharp voice. Zen smiled faintly and then asked, after passing the test, can I rule the reincarnation land? Come with me. Flying to the other side of the space, the magical crow flapped its wings and circled along the edge. On the edge of the space appeared some straight lines, which were connected to each other to form a small pyramid. In the middle of the pyramid, there was a small eye. Whoosh! After the pyramid appeared, it flew straight towards Zen and floated in front of him. What's this? It was the first time that he had seen this fist-sized pyramid. The reincarnation soul weapon. You will be able to rule the reincarnation land if you refine it, the magical crow screeched. The magical crow's answer confused Zen, so he clarified, can I refine the reincarnation soul weapon? But the Hall soul said that I couldn't use it. The reincarnation soul weapon is of great importance. Since your blood isn't pure, you can't use it. But if you can refine it, you will be able to control the reincarnation land, the magical crow replied. The reincarnation soul weapon could make the creatures of the entire divine land reincarnate and trace their memories back to any lifetime. Chiyu had set up so many restrictions for safety. Even if the outsiders, like Gregorio, had gotten the stone mouse, they would not be able to take the test. Even if they took the reincarnation soul weapon and took control of the reincarnation land, people with impure blood, like Zen, wouldn't be able to reincarnate all the creatures in the divine land. Nodding his head, Zen stared at the magical crow and asked, "You've been here for so many years. Do you want to go out with me?" In Zen's opinion, the magical crow, as Chiyu's pet, could do something for the 9 Li race. Quack, quack. Hearing Zen's words, the magical crow said in a serious tone, on behalf of the Grand Chieftain, I have to test all the arrivals here, so I cannot leave at will. If. Zen rolled his eyes at the magical crow's long speech. It was obvious that it had known about the crisis in the divine land, so it hid here as a coward. Zen simply grabbed the reincarnation soul weapon, turned around and left. He should find a quiet place to refine the reincarnation soul weapon. Rumble. When Zen returned from the reincarnation hall, the huge door opened with a gentle push. After opening the door, Zen condensed a fire bead, illuminating the reincarnation land as if it was in daylight. Zen took a look and saw that Leland and the others were still lying on the ground. Since he already killed the big mice, they wouldn't have any other danger, so Zen decided to just let them take a rest. He sat cross-legged, putting the reincarnation soul weapon in front of his belly. The process of refining the reincarnation soul weapon was somewhat special. The first step was still to prove his blood. Zen made a small cut on his finger, and a drop of golden blood dripped into the reincarnation soul weapon. The blood spread out from the triangular top and flowed along the lines on the surface of the pyramid. But no matter how the blood flowed, it failed to flow into the eye of the pyramid. This was one of the disadvantages of the impure blood. Otherwise, controlling the reincarnation soul weapon would be so easy. Putting his 2 thumbs on his temples, Zen closed his eyes slowly. In no time, a wisp of his soul quietly came out from his forehead and circled around in the air before entering the reincarnation soul weapon. Buzz. The moment Zen's soul entered the reincarnation soul weapon, his body shook and he opened his eyes in a flash, looking surprised. Soon his body was connected with the reincarnation soul weapon and thus with the reincarnation land. This is. Suddenly, a number appeared in Zen's mind. The number of memory flames is actually 77 million quadrillion. 1,000 billion was a trillion, and 1,000 trillion was a quadrillion. 77 million quadrillion. There were actually so many memory flames in the divine land. Subconsciously looking at the sea of memory flames, Zen confirmed the number of memory flames was beyond his imagination. That is because of the rule of reincarnation. The creatures will leave memory flames every time they die. Just imagine how many creatures have been born in so many years. The total number is simply unimaginable. So what's Gregorio's identity after his recent reincarnation? Zen began to carefully search among the memory flames. When he had found Gregorio, his eyes flashed. Then, he jumped up and flew over onto the opposite step. In the face of the sea of memory flames, a thought flashed in Zen's mind. In the depths of the sea, an extremely bright memory flame rapidly danced. The memory flames of holy beings were far brighter than those of ordinary people. This pale yellow memory flame belonged to Gregorio. In the sea of memory flames, there were not many such bright memory flames. Without much hesitation, Zen began to read the memories in the memory flame. After he controlled the reincarnation land, he could search any memory flame. Theoretically speaking, all the creatures in the divine land were unable to keep secrets from Zen. A moment later, retreating from the memory flame, Zen murmured, "It's actually him. I'm afraid that even Nicholas doesn't expect that after Gregorio was reincarnated, he gave himself a different surname and has become a holy being again." Chapter 2315, Samuel's Secret. Gregorio and Nicholas were sworn enemies. Zen understood the grudge as he learned that Nicholas was the person behind the whole Yu clan's destruction. Zen could feel the hatred emitted from the depth of Gregorio's soul in his memory flame. It was not only the Yu clan that was destroyed, but even their floating island was involved. It also fell into the time sea. Gregorio died but had gradually found a way to be successfully reincarnated. He learned about the stone mouse and relied on it to gain life. As he took a second chance to live, he dare not use his former name. He changed his name into Samuel Han. Nicholas on the other hand had always been watchful and cautious, but some things were certainly inevitable. He couldn't have imagined that Samuel was the reincarnation of Gregorio. But the stone mouse has said that besides Gregorio, there are 3 other people who have been reincarnated. Who are they? Zen thought and pondered. The jade scale butterfly and the flame blood vulture had never appeared, and the only one who could be reincarnated endless times in the divine land was Samuel. So were the other 3 people someone Samuel knew? Did they get reincarnated with the help of Samuel? To get a deeper understanding, Zen once again looked at the sea of memory flames. The memory flames of the creatures in the divine land appeared simultaneously when their memories were formed and were stored there. Normally, he should be able to find the memory flame of Samuel. Through searching his memory, he should be able to know the answer. Zen closed his eyes and continued to search using the reincarnation soul weapon. After some time of searching, he opened his eyes with a trace of doubt on his face. Why can't I find Samuel's memory flame? Since Samuel had the stone mouse, he might have done some trick. At the thought of this, Zen went back to the altar. He took out the stone mouse's corpse, and threw it back to the altar. He watched as the corpse came back to life again. Squeak, squeak, squeak. You said you would not kill me. The stone mouse cried out with a pitiful look on its face. Zen stared at it coldly and said, I knew Gregorio's true identity. When the stone mouse heard Zen's words, its bean-sized eyes widened as it stared at him. It asked in a panic, how did you know that? It thought for a while, then a hint of panic appeared in its eyes. Have you passed the test? Of course I have, Zen responded with a smile. It's impossible. Only my master has the qualification. You are not qualified. The stone mouse screamed in disbelief. It had grown deep feelings of attachment to Gregorio, its master. According to the rule, the theurgy of stone mouse could only be used by itself, but it rebelled and did not follow that rule. Instead, it even used some secret method to integrate its own theurgy with Gregorio. As a result, Gregorio could directly search the memory flames without the use of the reincarnation soul weapon. Of course, even the stone mouse itself couldn't search the memory flames freely like Zen could do. Thus, Gregorio could not randomly search the memory flames of any people he wanted. If I am not qualified, then Gregorio is even more unqualified, Zen said coldly. He is not a 9Li member, so how could he have the pure Chiyu's blood? Pure Chiyu's blood. My master said that he would bring it when he came to the reincarnation land again. The stone mouse cried out in frustration. Perhaps because the stone mouse was exasperated, it lost its head and in rage it pounced on Zen again. Unfortunately, its current cultivation was only at the spirit transformation realm. It was not even a proving godly warrior. With a light pinch from Zen, it was unable to move. Zen's eyebrows furrowed at the words. He thought back and realized that he had never been close to Samuel. But he noticed that this holy being had tried to get close to Nicholas, almost at all costs. In the divine land, besides Zen who had Chiyu's blood, his mother also had it. Harold had once informed him that his mother, Lorena, was likely to have fallen into the hands of Nicholas. Would Samuel target his mother? Zen felt that it was even more necessary for him to go on investigating. Who are the other 3 people that have been reincarnated? Zen continued to ask. I won't tell you. If you have the ability, just kill me. The stone mouse continued to scream, refusing to tell him the answer. Do you really think that I can't kill you? It's not difficult for me to find your memory flame. Zen sneered. If I erase all the memory flame of your previous lives, will you still have the ability to be reincarnated? Even if you get reincarnated, you are no longer yourself, right? The stone mouse's body trembled hearing Zen's threat. The soul was just a container. If it lost all the previous memories, how could it prove that it was still itself? Thinking of the promise made by its master, the stone mouse compromised in the end and agreed. Gregorio would certainly come back, and then he would kill this brat. Feeling defeated, it spoke, the other 3 are not important. They are just his children after he got reincarnated. 3 children, Zen was slightly surprised and asked, who are they? Pascal, Elena, and Laquisha, the stone mouse replied obediently. Elena and Lucretia, did they die? Zen continued to ask. The stone mouse replied after thinking for a while, die. Not exactly. In fact, Gregorio just took their memory flames out in these few years and poured other people's memory flames to fill the gap. I'll check it myself, Zen muttered and carried the stone mouse. He then leapt to the top of the stairs. He reached out his hand and at the same time pinched gently. In the sea of memory flames, 3 memory flames floated gently towards Zen. Is Lucretia's memory flame light purple? Zen thought that Lucretia had died, and he was so sad that he couldn't even bear to read her memory. As his fingertips touched the light purple memory flame, he was quickly immersed in the memory of Lucretia. Gradually, he came to learn more things. Since young, Lucretia had shown astonishing talent. She had grown strong with the use of the destructive Thurgy, the purple preternatural flame. Although she enjoyed a high position in the Han clan, she had been lonely. When she went to the Divine Refinement Forbidden Land, she was still a loner. At that time, she met Zen and he was almost clear about what happened to her later. She had originally planned to make use of him. But later on, she had discovered a lot of things and had been sent back to the Divine Land. After returning to the Divine Land, she had actually been missing him every day. Once, she secretly went to the Zhang clan and through it, tried to sneak into the evolutionary universe. There were strict restrictions for true gods to enter a universe. Furthermore, with the intervention of Harold, the Zhang clan had already lost the control of the evolutionary universe. She was not aware of it, so how could she make it? This girl was so naive. Zen smiled bitterly as he read this piece of memory. He continued to read. She had once again met Zen on the floating island of the Han clan. In the end, they had later explored the Time Sea Forbidden Land. These events happened not long ago, but they were replayed from the perspective of Lucretia. Reading her memory on her perspective gave him a strange feeling. After the journey, joy had taken away Zen from the Time Sea. Lucretia, Elena and Pascal began to cultivate in seclusion under Samuel's requirement. The problem started to happen at this period of time. Chapter 2316, Find Out the Truth. At this time, the Han clan began to dissolve the Purple Soul Hall because of Joy's disappearance. In order to prove his innocence to Nicholas, Samuel drove everyone from the Purple Soul Hall out of the Han clan's floating island. The children of the Han clan, especially Lucretia, quarreled with Samuel over it and tried their best to stop it, but to no avail. Soon after that, Samuel requested Pascal, Elena, and Lucretia to cultivate in seclusion. The 2 girls were initially resistant to this but eventually agreed. But right before they left, Samuel said something puzzling. He stated that during their cultivation, he would help them reach the consummation of True God Realm. Reaching the consummation of True God Realm was not something that could be decided or learned, even by the members of powerful clans on floating islands. It had to be decided by fate. Even the Dongfang clan would not dare to say that they could cultivate 3 consummate true gods through a short-term closed-door cultivation. Moreover, at that time, Elena was only a proving godly warrior and Lucretia was only a low-ranked true god. It was impossible to even think that they could reach the consummation of True God Realm in such a short period of time. Anyway, the 3 of them started cultivating in seclusion, and everything went fine for the first few days, until something strange happened. The last scene in Lucretia's memory was the sight of Samuel appearing in front of her and reaching out his hand toward her forehead. Before she could scream, her memory came to an abrupt end. Buzz. Zen stared at the memory flame that danced gently in his hand with a complicated expression in his eyes. It seemed that to some extent, Lucretia was dead. As long as someone was alive, their memory flame would constantly be updated. With every second that passed in the Divine Land, a memory would be accumulated in one's memory flame. Regardless of whether a moment revolved around pain, despair, boring cultivation, or an important event in one's life, like weddings or funerals, it would all be added to the memory flame in real time. So in the reincarnation land, when no new memories were added to a memory flame, it could be said that the owner of that memory flame was dead. By this logic, Lucretia, Elena, and Pascal were all dead as their memory flames hadn't been updated for a long time. I wonder what's going on with Lucretia and the other 2 now, Zen wondered with a frown. Since Lucretia's memory flame had stopped updating, he could not find out what had happened to her. Suddenly, a name popped into Zen's mind. Kelsey. She has a good relationship with Elena and Lucretia. She must know what happened to them. With that thought, Zen continued to search the sea of memory flames and soon spotted Kelsey's memory flame. With a flick of his finger, the light pink memory flame shot toward him. Zen immediately grabbed hold of it and started to view Kelsey's memories. He skipped the parts about Kelsey's childhood and directly went to her memories of the last few years. He had thought he would be able to find out some important information from Kelsey, but he was left disappointed. Kelsey had also been in seclusion for the past few years and hadn't come out yet. It seemed that she had more likely been put under house arrest than sent to cultivate in seclusion. She didn't know what had happened to her two sisters at all. Standing at the top of the stairs, Zen looked at the boundless sea of memory flames as he paced back and forth. Samuel had hidden his memory flame, and Pascal ended similar like Laquisha. Then, who else in the Han clan could help Zen find out the truth? At this moment, several extremely bright dots flashed in the distance in the sea of memory flames. Most of the light spots in this sea of 77 million quadrillion memory flames were very dim. The memory flames of those who had become true gods were slightly bright. The memory flames of those who had reached the consummation of true god realm were glowing, while the memory flames of the holy beings dazzled like stars. It was not that the brightness of a memory flame was decided by one's cultivation, it was decided by the length of one's lifetime and the richness of their memories. The people that had the longest lives might not necessarily be holy beings, but in general, holy beings had a long lifespan. So, the memory flames that emitted the brightest lights mostly belonged to holy beings. Nicholas. Zen's heart skipped a beat. Although he didn't know whether Nicholas knew any information regarding Laquisha's situation, he could find some information about his mother and even about the recent actions of the alliance of the powerful clans on the floating islands. This was an opportunity he couldn't miss. Without any further ado, Zen carefully searched the sea of memory flames. Soon, a dazzling golden memory flame started to move in the sea of memory flames. This is Nicholas's memory flame. Zen stared at the golden light dot and began to view the memories in it. It turned out that even before Nicholas was born, the Dongfang clan was already a very powerful clan. So, Nicholas faced great competition in the Dongfang clan, but relying on his solid foundation, he made great contributions to his clan. Zen naturally wanted to learn each and every single detail about his opponent, but there was just too much information to absorb. Nicholas had so many divine eras worth of memories in his memory flame that it was impossible for Zen to look at all of them in detail. He quickly fast-forwarded to the part of the memory flame which contained memories from the recent decades. What he was most concerned about was the news about his mother. Soon, Zen saw the memories about his journey to the Silverwing Divine City. A powerful master at the other shore realm, Master Hamish. Is this man a Yellow Emperor Guard? This was the first time Zen had seen a Yellow Emperor Guard in the Divine Land. He hadn't expected a powerful master at the other shore realm to assort medicinal materials in the Silverwing Divine City. Soon after, Zen saw Nicholas leading the holy beings of the alliance of the powerful clans deep underground to search for Lorena. By the time that had happened, Zen had already been thrown out of the Divine Land by Lorena and had fallen toward the bottom of the chaos. Indeed, my mother was taken away by Nicholas. Hatred filled Zen's face. Just when he had finally been reunited with his mother and started to believe that everything was going to change for the better, Nicholas and Hamish had ruined everything. As Zen continued to watch Nicholas's memories, he was surprised by what he saw. Nicholas built a delicate palace for his mother and protected her carefully. In front of his mother, this man was no longer the overbearing holy being that he usually was. He even promised to her that he would find her a body in the time sea. It seems that my mother is not in danger for the time being, Zen thought to himself in relief. Zen got a general idea of what was happening next with Nicholas. Then, after learning about Zen's return, Nicholas decided to go with Murphy to the Murphy universe to test Emily, Timotheus, and others. It was obvious that Nicholas was already feeling a sense of crisis. He summoned the leaders of the alliance of the rich and powerful clans on the floating islands to Golden Rain Hall for a meeting. From Nicholas's memory flame, Zen was able to learn what had happened in Golden Rain Hall. In Golden Rain Hall, he finally saw Laquisha, Elena, and Pascal, who had returned from their cultivation in seclusion. They had really reached the consummation of true God realm as Samuel had told them they would. However, Zen's heart ached when he saw Laquisha. She was no longer the Laquisha that he knew. The bodies of Samuel's 3 children seemed to have become containers that held other people's memory flames. Previously, Zen had discovered that by absorbing the memories in a person's memory flame, one could obtain a massive amount of cultivation experience in a minimal time and improve their cultivation level at an unimaginable speed. However, for Zen, that had purely been a hypothesis. He had never imagined that someone would actually do it. Samuel, in order to avenge himself, he has done everything he can, and he has even sacrificed his own children. Zen sighed. Chapter 2317, The Abyss Demon Region. Zen had seen Gregorio's memory flame before and knew that there was great hatred between Gregorio and Nicholas. After being reincarnated, Gregorio could have begun a new life, but in order to take revenge, he had given up everything without any hesitation. A person like that was probably more terrifying than Nicholas. Buzz. Zen didn't leave Nicholas's memory flame until he finished viewing everything, right down to the last drop of his memories. A strange look appeared on Zen's face then. It seemed that Nicholas hadn't wanted to leave Lorena while going to the Abyss Demon region with the alliance of the powerful clans, so he had taken her along as well. If my mother is in the Abyss Demon region, what should I do? After viewing the memory flames of two holy beings, Zen felt a little tired. He shook his head slightly, trying to forget the trivial memories. After descending the stairs, Zen walked up to Leland and the others. These people should not have entered the reincarnation land along with him. They had almost paid the price of their lives. They should definitely gain something. Using the memory flame to cultivate was a good method. As long as they didn't destroy their own memory flame and were careful enough not to shatter their soul, their cultivation base would be further improved. Now, it was time to wake them up. Billowing smoke rose up, blotting out the sky and covering the sun. However, the Abyss Demon region was not dark. Crimson magma was flowing between the numerous cracks in the ground, shrouding the whole area in heat and reddish light. In addition to the light and heat, the magma gave off a pungent smell of sulfur. Of course, anyone who stayed in the Abyss Demon region for a long time would get used to this strange and unwelcoming environment, even the smell. Plop, 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 a black fish leapt out of the magma. Fish like this, without flesh or blood, could only be found in the Abyss Demon region. The only thing covering the fish's bones was a thin layer of black skin. Thanks to the special property of its skin, it could survive in the horrible high temperature of magma. Just as the black fish fell back down into the magma, a thin line flew over and hooked onto the fish. With a slight tug of the line, the fish was lifted up. The body of this fish is very special. Its skin can be used to make a fire-resisting shield, a consummate true god from the Fang clan said as he reached out for the black fish at the end of the line. However, as soon as his fingers touched the fish, he screamed and threw it up in the air. The fish was burning hot, just like magma. Thinking quickly, he pointed his space ring at the fish and stowed it away. Over 10 years ago, the rich clans on the floating islands had barely known anything about the Abyss Demon region. At that time, they had been free to go on adventures in the other 3 forbidden areas. After these forbidden areas were closed, however, the alliance of the rich clans had been forced to go to the Abyss Demon region. Right now, whether they wanted to or not, they knew more about the Abyss Demon region than before. Plop, plop, plop. Just then, the magma underneath began to bubble up again. Stan, it seems that another black fish is going to come out, one of them said. Stan Fang simply smiled. Then, with a gentle pinch of his finger, he once again threw out the thin thread. Whoosh! The thread shot out straight toward the magma. Splash! At the same time, something jumped out of the magma. Unlike what Stan had thought, it was not the fish, but a black hand. The thread fell straight into the grasp of the huge hand, which closed its fingers around the thread and pulled it down hard. It all happened so quickly that Stan was pulled forward before he could react. Stan, the consummate true god next to him, yelled in concern. Reacting quickly, he raised his hand, sending a beam of blade light straight down toward the thread that the giant hand was pulling Stan with. Bang! The blade light cut the thread into 2 pieces. But by then, Stan Fang had fallen into the huge hand's grasp and was being dragged down into the magma. Oh no, Stan is being dragged down. The consummate true god shouted. A split second later, a flash of light appeared in the distance, where the holy beings and the demi-holy beings of the alliance of the powerful clans were resting. As soon as he heard the consummate true god shouting for help, the demi-holy being of the Fang clan turned around and flew away. He glanced around and, noticing the fluctuation on the surface of the magma, furrowed his brows. Then, he jumped down from midair and slapped his hand on the ground. Clap! With a ringing sound, a wave of cold air rushed out of his body and spread out at an incredible speed. The crimson magma froze in an instant. It turned pitch black before quickly being covered with a layer of white frost. Leaping over to the layer of frozen magma, the demi-holy being punched down. Crack, crack, crack. As the magma began to crack, the demi-holy being grabbed 2 frozen pieces from the ground. Stan Fang and the huge hand that had dragged him down. Then, the demi-holy being lifted Stan's tough body and threw it on the ground. Immediately, the ice around him cracked. Next, he stepped on the huge hand, which was fragile with cold, instantly turning it to powder. He had no interest whatsoever in killing the owner of the hand under the magma. It would just be a waste of his energy. After absorbing the chilly air in Stanfang's body, he started to scold him. Your cultivation base is very high, but how could you be so careless? You have brought disgrace on our Fang clan. The hand which had pulled Stanfang into the magma belonged to a lava giant. If Stan had been just a little more careful, the lava giant wouldn't have posed any threat to him. I'm so sorry. Stanfang knew that he had indeed been too careless. Without responding, the demi-holy being of the Fang clan took a step forward before turning into a flash of light and returning to his resting spot. At that spot, Nicholas and the other holy beings were currently looking at Rocher. Sitting with his legs crossed, Rocher said lightly, in the secret land on the second stage, there is an exit which leads to the third stage. I'm sure this is a shortcut. Taking this path will save us at least a month. When the holy beings heard this, their faces lit up. Sure, a month was not a long period of time for them. However, in the Abyss Demon region, an accident could occur in the span of mere seconds, so the less time they spent here, the better. Naturally, everyone was willing to take this shortcut. Why didn't you report it to your clan before? Troy questioned. Rocher glanced at him indifferently and replied, I've never tested this path, and I've already reported the secret land in the second stage. Have you ever been there? In the last year, Rocher had discovered and explored the secret land in the second stage of the Abyss Demon region. In fact, on the side of the secret land was a path to the third stage. However, Rocher had not stayed long after stepping into the third stage. It was too dangerous for him to wander around the third stage of the Abyss Demon region alone. Well, it's not a big deal, said Nicholas dryly. Just follow the path Lowell described. Chapter 2318, Shortcut. Since Nicholas had made a decision, no one dared to object. They were having a brief break when the smoke in the distance suddenly rolled up. There was a faint flicker of fire in the thick smoke, accompanied by low growls. The billowing smoke and the noise attracted everyone's attention. Demon region fire spirits. There seems to be a large number of them approaching, one of them said. The faces of some of the consummate true gods turned pale. Demon region fire spirits were special creatures born in fire. They were known to wander in groups and leave destruction in their wakes. In the Abyss Demon region, the coming of the Demon region fire spirits was the same as a disaster. Naturally, any true gods and even consummate true gods who saw this scene would quickly escape and find a safe place to hide. If they were not quick enough, even consummate true gods would die in the smoke. Let me deal with them. Samuel, who had been silent for a while, stood up immediately. Creatures born in the fire of the Abyss Demon region. I like it. Leave them to me, Samuel. Ha ha. Clark said. As he spoke, he leapt up and flew toward the sky. In midair, he stretched out his hands and released flames from his cinnabar field. These flames rolled together into a door of fire. Sizzle. All of a sudden, 3 fiery dragons that were 100,000 feet long charged out of the door. These dragons were all different in appearance, but each of them emitted a strong aura. All these fiery dragons had been raised by Clark for many years using the elementary fire godly way, and each of them was as strong as a demi-holy being. More importantly, they were all from the unceasing fire that Clark had created. Even if such a fiery dragon was killed, it could still be reborn in his inner world. From this point of view, it was similar to holy beings' reliance on their universes to live forever. Clatter. The 3 dragons flew straight into the billowing smoke, splitting it into 3 parts. Although the demon region fire spirits were powerful, they mostly relied on their numbers. When faced with the 3 dragons, they had no way of fighting them. Instead, they were engulfed by the dragons. Woo, woo, woo. As the flames in the smoke swirled frantically, shrill screams could be heard all around. 5 minutes later, the flames and the smoke had disappeared, and only the 3 fiery dragons remained hovering in the air. After swallowing a massive number of demon region fire spirits, their bodies had become even larger. Return, Clark commanded calmly. The 3 fiery dragons raised their heads and roared at the sky. Then, after stretching their bodies, they flew back toward Clark's inner world. The 3 holy fiery dragons you've refined are getting stronger and stronger. Congratulations. Samuel didn't miss the opportunity to flatter Clark. Patting his belly with a smile, Clark said, you have a sharp eye. With consistent training, these holy fiery dragons will be able to contend against a holy being within half a divine era. Maybe even 1 holy fiery dragon will be enough to resist a holy being in the future. Samuel added eagerly. Ah, that might be too much for a holy fiery dragon, Clark said with a laugh. The cultivation of godly ways had limits. After one reached the consummation of true God realm, the space for improvement to reach higher realms was not great. That was why some very powerful consummate true gods had the ability to fight against demi-holy beings. In reality, a demi-holy being or a holy being was still at the consummation of the true God realm. No matter how powerful a holy fiery dragon was, it would be impossible for it to fight a holy being. Samuel's flattery was too much. None of the holy beings spoke, but in their hearts, they disdained Samuel. After Clark dealt with the demon region fire spirits, the alliance of powerful clans resumed their journey. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Everyone soared to the sky and flew forward. Along the way, there were all sorts of ferocious beasts living in the abyss demon region. These creatures were usually very fierce. Countless true gods, and even some consummate true gods, had died at their hands. A rock scorpion lion leapt out of its cave after sensing some movement in the sky. Standing on the top of the brown rock mountain, it raised its head and let out a loud roar. But the moment the roar sounded, an incomparably large iceberg suddenly fell from the sky without warning. The iceberg was too fast for the rock scorpion lion to dodge. It could only cry out like a kitten before being flattened under the iceberg. Its body was completely torn apart under the pressure. After seeing a creature as strong as the rock scorpion lion die a pathetic death like this, the other creatures in the second stage of the abyss demon region could only choose to hide or avoid these strangers from the divine land. More than 20 holy beings, 40 demi-holy beings, and 100 consummate true gods were flying through the second stage. The abyss demon region was just too large. Even though this group of people moved extremely fast, it took them 3 days to reach their destination, a sea of lava where no one could see the bottom. But at the edge of the sea of lava seemed to be an invisible wall that was blocking the flow of lava. When the lava reached this invisible wall, it bent and flowed down instead of continuing to flow horizontally. From the distance, the edge of the lava sea looked like stairs. And in fact, the abyss demon region was indeed layer upon layer that stretched downward into the deep ground. When they arrived, everyone looked at Rocher. "Lowell, where is the shortcut you mentioned?" asked Nicholas. "It should be around here." Rocher slowly descended from the air. He flew around the lava sea with his eyes sweeping over every inch. Last time, when Rocher had been chasing a vicious creature, he had accidentally discovered the secret here. The lava formed surging waves as it flowed, and these waves, in turn, formed vortexes. But all the vortexes disappeared after barely even spinning, with the exception of one, which always stayed in the same place. It didn't take long for Rocher to find this vortex. Swish! He held his sword with one hand and stretched his body, the light in his eyes getting brighter. Hiya! With a cry, he stabbed at the vortex with his sword. Splash! The vortex was split by an invisible sword momentum, and a hole appeared in the lava sea. Strangely enough, the lava around the hole didn't merge, which made it possible for a tunnel to be formed. There was stable space law being emitted from the tunnel. When Nicholas saw the tunnel, a look of surprise came over his face. This path was deliberately left here, he noted. Jeremiah nodded and said, "It might have been built by some fiend to serve as a shortcut for them to go up from the bottom." "Very good. Good job, Lowell." Nicholas flashed a satisfied smile at Rocher. Rocher put away his longsword, clasped his hands toward Nicholas, and retreated to the side. Chapter 2319, The Purple Mist. The space law was ineffective in the abyss demon region. Everyone seemed aware of it, but no one was able to explain the reason behind it. It didn't matter if they were demi-holy beings or holy beings. Nobody could use the grand teleportation technique in this place. Looking at the space channel, they wondered how it was even created. Without thinking twice, Nicholas rushed into the space channel first. Following him, the other holy beings, demi-holy beings and the consummate true gods also went into it one after the other. The members of the Han clan ended up being the last ones to enter. I never expected that this young man from the Dongfang clan would also find this shortcut. Anyway, if they want to take this path, I'm afraid they will have to pay a bigger price. Samuel thought to himself. As a matter of fact, Rocher was not the first one to discover this shortcut. A long time ago, Samuel had used the same shortcut to escape from the abyss demon region. It would be safe to assume that among all the holy beings in the divine land, Samuel probably knew the ways around the abyss demon region the most. Looking at the others, he ordered flatly, "Let's go inside." Floating behind him, Pascal, Laquisha and Elena reflected indifference on their faces. Alfredo, the leader of the Han clan, decided to stay on the floating island instead of joining them in the trip to the abyss demon region. Yes, the three responded in unison. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Turning into 4 beams of light, they flew straight into the space channel. The group of over 100 powerful warriors flew all the way through the long space channel. Being built in a very peculiar way, strange lights flickered around the long channel, as different colors were carried out by the shadows. Even the holy beings could not decipher the power resonated inside this channel. If the space law can't be employed in the Abyss Demon region, then how did this space channel come into being? Zeke, the holy being of the Fang clan, asked with much curiosity. The great fiends are very intelligent. Lurking in the depths of this forbidden land for so many years, they always end up coming up with these unimaginable methods, Jeremiah replied. Deeply immersed in the internal momentum of the space channel, Murphy suddenly spoke his mind. Is it possible that some fiends have reached the other shore realm? Tracing back to his old memories, Murphy could still clearly remember how Emily built the space channel. Her actions penetrated through the Murphy universe with unimaginable power. Murphy was almost omnipotent inside his own universe, and yet he could do nothing to the space channel. Hearing Murphy's question, Nicholas smiled faintly and shook his head. The other shore realm? It's not that easy. If that's the case, I will definitely not ask you to follow me into the Abyss Demon region. No matter how powerful and intelligent the great fiends are, they are still creatures in this forbidden land only. They are born with huge limitations, so it's impossible for them to reach the other shore realm. Murphy, are you frightened by the other shore realm warriors coming from outside the divine land? All creatures in the forbidden land were only illusions, essentially the same as the divine might coins, and were created by the faith energy. The fear in the hearts of the divine citizens constantly appeared in more and more complicated forms. Over the countless years, they had imagined all sorts of creatures related to bloodiness, strength, intelligence and cruelty, which was how the fiends were created. To a certain extent, such creatures were even more perfect than the holy beings of the divine land. However, no matter how powerful they were, that did not change the fact that they were only illusions stuck in the forbidden land. If they decided to leave, they would disappear without a trace. The only exception was probably Edmund's appearance in the debate venue. With Edmund appearing as an incarnation of fear, they considered it a very rare case. Yes, that's true. The group of other shore realm warriors that came with Zen is a big hidden trouble for us all, Murphy admitted automatically. Many other holy beings who heard him also darkened their faces. Thinking that those other shore realm warriors were like swords hanging above their heads, they worried they might fall and take their lives in a few years or decades. Don't worry, Master Hamish will find a way out, said Nicholas. Moreover, if I manage to control the Abyss Demon region this time, we might have the ability to win against them. Rocher, who was not far away, quietly listened and was surprised with how the conversations of the holy beings were going. He hadn't thought that Zen would bring a group of other shore realm masters back to the divine land. But it sounded that even the holy beings felt threatened and terrified by this fact. Although he was greatly surprised, he tried to keep an emotionless facade. Anyway, Rocher found this a very good news, and highly advantageous. In the past, Rocher had always been willing to sacrifice his life to fulfill Mike's plan. However, one's state of mind could always change as time went by. After going through so many things, he became more and more reluctant to leave this world and began to doubt his mission. If the other shore realm masters take actions, there's a chance they can change my predetermined fate. With that in mind, a small hope started to grow in his heart. 6 hours later, they had traveled the entire space channel. And in a few more seconds, they reached the end of the channel. The moment they stepped out, they were engulfed in a thick purple mist. The mist was so dense that one could hardly see anything within 100 feet radius. Feeling puzzled, Nicholas couldn't help asking, "Lowell, where are we?" Looking around, a cautious look appeared on Rocher's face. "I don't recall seeing a purple mist when I passed through this channel last time." "It doesn't seem to be a mist," Murphy commented. Stretching out his hand, he was able to actually grasp the mist in his hand. Strange, he thought. Loosening his grip, he felt the mist slide down his hand like a handful of sand. "They are a bunch of small bugs," a consummate true god exclaimed, staring at the mist. Hearing his conclusion, the rest also stared at the mist and observed. And he was right. What initially appeared as a dense purple mist was actually a group of very small bugs. These bugs were much smaller than the grains of sand, and they looked like a mist when they gathered together. "How disgusting, let me burn them up." Letting out a sneer, Clark waved his hand and flapped out a flame. In the blink of an eye, the flame quickly spread out, covering the range of tens of millions of feet above their heads, as if it could burn a hole in the sky. Normally, all bugs and insects were afraid of all kinds of flames. Clark's idea was to burn these small bugs to ashes in an instant. However, to his surprise, not a single one of them was burnt to death. The blazing flames continued to spread in the air, but the purple mist around them had not decreased at all. What? How can these bugs survive my flames? That's weird, Clark exclaimed, his eyes widened in surprise. If these weak little bugs were not even afraid of the flames of a holy being, that could only mean they were immune to all types of flames. I am unable to spread out my spiritual sense, shouted a demi-holy being, panicking. His concern raising panic among the others, they also tried to release their spiritual sense. Samuel watched them from where he was, the corners of his mouth curling up into a smile. As their spiritual sense started to spread, the quiet purple mist suddenly started to roll crazily. Chapter 2320, Tracking the Spiritual Sense. The purple bugs originally had outspread throughout a large range of the area, but not one had showed any signs of attack. However, for this instant, all the bugs went crazy. Likened to wolves that had smelled blood, they swarmed towards the living creatures below. It's itchy. These bugs are biting me. It hurts. A consummate true god was immediately surrounded by countless small bugs which made him look like as if he was wrapped up by thick purple mist. He struggled madly and repeatedly rolled on the ground. Dang bugs. I'll shatter you into dead meat. A stream of strong internal momentum had then suddenly surged from the consummate true god's body. Crack, crack, crack. The consummate true god seemed to have already lost his mind. The streaks of lightning were like violent dragons shooting towards the people around him. The people noticed the sudden change and all had scattered away to avoid the lightning. Keanu, are you insane? A demi-holy being from the Leng clan scolded as he blocked a streak of lightning with his hand. The man who just went berserk was a consummate true god from the Leng clan and his name was Keanu Leng. However, Keanu Leng looked as though he was indifferent to the people around him and still continued to activate his internal momentum crazily. It made things difficult for the demi-holy being of the Leng clan to get close to him. The small purple bugs could even resist the flames from Clark, so they naturally wouldn't be affected by Keanu Leng's lightning attack at all. A few seconds passed as the current situation seemed to get worse. Jeremiah, the holy being of the Leng clan, couldn't patiently tolerate it and was about to attack but stopped. Keanu Leng, who kept on rolling on the ground, had also stopped his movement. The purple bugs, that forcefully attached themselves to his body, had all flown into the sky. Astonishment was written all over their faces when they saw how Keanu Leng looked like after every bug was cleared. His body was still intact, but it was evident that there was a big hole on the top of his head. It showed signs that it was bitten by the little bugs. The bugs had actually gotten into his head and ate up his soul. Keanu Leng was after all a consummate true god. Even if his soul was swallowed up, his body still continued to emit a strong life force. His inner world was still automatically running. However, everyone knew that his body now had become nothing but a soulless shell. He was not the only one who was attacked. Other 5 consummate true gods and 3 demi-holy beings were also attacked by the purple small bugs. During the attack, a demi-holy being of the Lu clan soared into the sky and tried to fight off and get rid of the purple bugs. However, as he flew away, he attracted more purple bugs to come at him. After a long while, he was not able to fight them off but fell from the air and crashed to the ground with a loud bang. Similar to how Keanu Leng lost his life, there was also a big round hole at the top of the head of the demi-holy being from the Lu clan. His soul was also swallowed up by the purple bugs, leaving only a soulless shell. 9 people, including 3 demi-holy beings, lost their lives in the blink of an eye. Everyone's heart was in a mess. They felt nervous and in panic. God knew what kind of creatures these bugs were. Even the holy beings were unable to kill them, so were they doomed to be unable to get out alive today. Some people had already fixated their gazes on the space channel. If they came back from the space channel, they might have a chance to survive. Don't panic. These purple bugs won't attack us on their own initiative. Nicholas spoke in a calm tone. At the most critical moment, what he said had calmed everyone down. Yes, these purple bugs only attacked some specific people, not all of us. Murphy echoed. Don't do anything before everything is made clear. These bugs are indeed very strange, Clark added, sweat was clearly seen on his ruddy face. This place was worthy of being called the Abyss Demon region. If they were not alert and careful enough, even holy beings could do nothing but await for their tragic fate. Everyone kept silent with their lips tightly shut. They didn't even dare utter a single word and just looked straight at Nicholas in silence. They were afraid that their voice would attract the purple bugs. Nicholas narrowed his eyes as he looked down at the living dead, sprawled on the ground. He bowed his head and was lost in his own thought. Rocher suddenly spoke up, "These little bugs don't have much wisdom. Just now, the holy being of the Tang clan used fire to burn them, but they didn't attack that holy being of the Tang clan. We all know that. Do you think we need you to tell us?" Troy, who was just beside him, interjected with a sneer. Rocher ignored him and continued, "But the reason why these bugs launched attacks was because of a remark of the demi-holy being from the Liu clan." A remark? Nicholas thought for a while, and his eyes suddenly lit up. Keaton has just shouted, "I am unable to spread out my spiritual sense." Keaton Liu was one of the group of people who just lost their lives and died. He was a demi-holy being of the Liu clan. The situation was chaotic just now. Every one of them had struggled to keep their lives and many had ignored this detail. Hearing Rocher's words, many people remembered what happened. That's right, when he said that he couldn't spread out his spiritual sense, "I also plan to release my spiritual sense," one of the demi-holy beings echoed. Rocher nodded in agreement and said, "Perhaps these bugs locate their targets by tracking the spiritual sense. If I'm not wrong, the 9 people who have been killed have just released their spiritual sense." Hearing Rocher's words, the holy beings could not help but nod as they took note of that important detail. Rocher's deduction was very reasonable. Otherwise, these bugs wouldn't have specially attacked just certain people. Some people even sweated on their back. If they had released their spiritual sense a moment ago, they would have been dead now. Their bodies would be among the dead bodies on the ground. However, this was only a guess. Their lives were still in danger. If it was not confirmed, they would not dare to act rashly. Samuel looked towards Lowell with a hint of appreciation in his eyes. It was said that Lowell was not from the Dongfang clan, but an outsider. There were only few people who could reach the consummation of true God realm relying on their own talent. Lowell was really smart. Among all the people present, only Samuel had come into contact with these soul-devouring bugs. The soul-devouring bugs were unafraid of any attacks from internal momentum. Be it thunderstorm godly way or elementary fire godly way, they could not cause any substantial harm to the bugs and they wouldn't be affected at all. The bugs only had one weakness. Their perception was very weak as they just floated around a certain area aimlessly all year round. But once they sensed the spiritual sense released by someone, they would rush towards their target like mosquitoes that had smelled blood. They would not stop until they ate up the soul of their target. We can check whether it is really like what Lowell has said. After saying that, Samuel smiled at Rocher. Nicholas looked over at Samuel and asked, "How do you plan to prove it?" Samuel moved quickly and got close to the transmission channel. He glanced at the purple soul-devouring bugs currently flying in the air. With a flash of his eyes, an extremely powerful stream of spiritual sense spread out in all directions. No sooner had he released his spiritual sense than it was swallowed by these small bugs. He did it swiftly in a short time so that his spiritual sense couldn't spread far in this purple mist. Like what had happened before, the purple mist started to surge crazily and sweep towards Samuel. The moment he released his spiritual sense, he had already hidden in the space channel.